There was another reality between the world and the spirits of the spirits. The small company was slowly heading to a giant tree from which other trees grow. The girl standing next to the boy showed her hand forward and said that this is the place. The Elfian pointed to the tree and explained that these magical trees, like all others, cannot grow endlessly. Sometimes they need to be cut. She looked at the boy with a smile and said it was his duty. The guy with a rod came to a tree that was quietly noisy in the wind and turned to the elder, assuring that he could be counted on him. The Elfian gratefully smiled and thanked Ison for his support. The guy reached forward and turned to the mighty winds from another world. He asked them to share with him his power. The winds heard the words of Ison. He gathered their strength, formed a sharp blade from it, and struck it sharply on a huge tree. The tree shaked loudly. Its trunk shakes. One of the men with delight shouted that the tree managed to blame only one stroke. The huge trunk was glowing right on the road. The children exclaimed the teacher in delight. It was something incredible. A tree with a rolled roar fell into the river and floated downstream. Ains looked at them and said that they were descendants of spirits, and so they would also be able to do the same. However, before learning about powerful magic, you should think about its consequences. The children listened carefully and agreed with everything. Some were suspicious of a guy who was engaged in children all the time. But the hero explained. So he thanks for the chance to live in this place. It is simple, so you can call him at least when. The guy was named Isonatus. He has lived in this world for 20 years and seems to have been the main character of this story. He returned home and saw the girl sweeping a porch. He greeted Rin saying, "I'm already at home." The girl Rin, which belongs to the ancient kind of elves with a long life, gladly met her mentor Ison. She said that another letter came in his name. Rin lived with Ison, was his student, and this time he wanted to tell her something important. The girl was very surprised when she learned from the teacher that he was going on a trip. It seemed to Rina that something was wrong with the teacher. Would he just go so unexpectedly? The guy just said that 20 years have passed since the demonic sword was destroyed. He was invited to this world to help, and now he felt much better. Even the girl noticed it with her own eyes. Einstein opened the door with a smile and informed Rin that guests had already come. There was a large bunch of letters on the table, and at this mountain it looked even more beautiful. The girl was surprised that Ison really reads all these letters carefully. He only nodded calmly, confirming it. All these letters are written by his former students. Although it was not easy to pass them, each month each of them found a way to send him a message after he was taken away. Rin recalled how Ainson once asked her to read a few letters aloud. All messages were told only about happy events. She smiled and said she would like to read these books again. Einson went quietly to the window while Rin sat on the sofa and carefully took one of the letters. Most of his students have already grown up and found their appointment. They were known under the name of hundreds of heroes. Someone became a sage, and some, a ruler or commander-in-chief. Some headed the best magical academies, while others even whole empires. There were hundreds of messages from these talented people among the letters. Their words were reminiscent of children who seek to receive approval from their father and are glad to share their successes. The students shared their stories about what new lands and peoples they managed to open on their own. They also advised where to go on a trip. Einstein sat down at the table and said he wanted to see the beauty of this world. That is why he decided to go into the human world to make sure he is. The problem is that his students are scattered around the world. If they find out that he is now in the world of people, it can lead to a mess and threaten ordinary people. Therefore, the hero decided to go on a journey to discover new places. If on the road meets someone, then a simple hello will be quite enough. Rin understood everything without words and suggested that no one tell them about their journey. Ains nodded in agreement. So, they will do. In simple words, the teacher decided to live again among people. This news was very pleased with the girl. Einstein nodded in response. Everything that happened really pushed him to such a decision. After 20 years of full devotion, he finally was able to come to his senses. When he climbed out of the chair, he reached for the letters and calmly said, "Respond to my call." Before a new journey, he asked a happy road, and at the same moment the sheet climbed up, flying in the air. They shone with bright light. It was the magic of the prophet. Due to the knowledge of magical words, Ains was able to control the world itself. Among all the letters, he chose the one that was best suited to this moment. One of them immediately flew to him. The hero asked which way to choose next. He took the letter to his hands and announced that their adventure began. and Rin said he could do everything she wants. She only smiled gently and asked if she could go with him. The guy asked when she was ready. The girl answered from behind the door that she was almost ready. She ran out of the room, apologized for the delay, and showed her backpack. Seeing Ison in his old equipment, she felt incredible joy. The guy smiled in response, noticing that she was well prepared. When he left the house, he asked once again, "Does she really want to go with him?" After all, students should not be accompanied. But Rin replied that he was not like a student, but just wanted to take care of him. Everything remains as before. In addition, he himself said she was free. He hopes he will not against it. Ain smiled, because it will be even easier for him. He was only glad. Rin shone with happiness. That's wonderful. She confessed that she had been preparing for a long time. Ison only nodded, because he thought. He went to the field and announced that he would soon open the gate of life. I reached forward, and suddenly a bright light broke out. A shining gate appeared in front of me. Rin was enthusiastically exclaimed that 20 years have passed since he last traveled between the worlds. Ison nodded in response, confirming her words. He confessed that he feels much more agitated than he thought earlier. His gaze suddenly stopped on a woman standing by the tree. The elder came to make sure that they really decided to go. The hero greeted the elder. In response, she smiled warmly to him. Rin sincerely thanked for his care. Ainson said that his students had repeatedly tried to contact him. He added that it was time to move on. He sincerely thanks for being allowed to stay in this world. The Elfian smiled, remembering what his first visit was. She looked at a young man who has almost changed in the last 20 years. Perhaps because of the slow course of time in this world, the body is growing much slower. Therefore, Ains has hardly changed. For goodbye, he thanked her for everything she did, but she asked not to thank her, because she also considered herself guilty of everything that had happened to the demon. In addition, this man worried about her children. She looked at the little souls that just appeared near the tree. The children hugged him and thanked him sincerely for his care. Ains was glad that they came to say goodbye. The elder assured that if you need help, he can always seek. The next time they see, these little spirits will become even more powerful. He shook her hand and promised her. When the right moment came, he would surely make himself known. The children wished the teacher a happy journey and said goodbye to Rin. When the gate shone with bright light, the characters waved each other once again and promised to meet again. The teacher recalled Rin that no one should know about their return, so they will have to travel the world together. Ring with a smile agreed to it. Aeson crossed the threshold of the gate and disappeared in a bright light. At the same moment, something strange happened in the capital of Riga. The old man in the crown was smiling for the first time, pleased with the fact that he was achieved. The king looked carefully at the people who stood in front of him and whispered the spell, squeezing the glowing magical balls in his hands. Once upon a time, according to an ancient legend, a majestic prophet could be overcome that a demonic blade, a faithful ally of the dark god, could overcome. Finally, the old man exclaimed joyfully, "After many years of effort, their work has brought fruit." People were tired, but their faces were glowing with joy. They wanted to make sure that all this really happened. The king promised that now everyone can relax and relax. Leaving the hall, he thought he convinced himself that the monthly costs of the ritual were definitely not in vain. Even with the help of his subordinates, he has not yet managed to match the great masters. The Duke Darius thought with a smile on his face. He really returned. Among the students of Ison was the one who now became the ruler of the kingdom. It was he who ordered the army searched for the prophet. Darius did not know when or where everything happened, but all the tips led to Ison. Many years ago, he was a student of his teacher, and still believed that he had achieved everything. The Duke, with determination in his eyes, decided that he would do his best to find him and get answers. Darius seems to have always been one of the most loyal students among all. A bright gate suddenly appeared in the forest, and Ainson came out of it. When the hero rose to the hill, he saw that the city of pioneers was quite close, and it was very pleased. Rin nodded, confirming that people had told about this city a long time ago, but she said, now everything was completely different. He was already written in letters about him, so Ains knew something about him. He was surprised that Rin remembers it all. The girl, smiling, knocked on her head lightly and said, "Elves have a very good memory. This is our feature." She proudly mentioned all the letters she allowed to read. If he wants to know more, he will always be able to ask her. Einstein heard that the forests had come to life for a long time, but it was another thing to see it. He decided that first it was worth going to the nearest city. He still had places he wanted to visit, and that was interested in Rin. She gladly agreed to go with him. She thought and wanted to ask something. Ains returned to her, waiting for her words. The girl wondered why his staff and the book glow. It seems that only now the hero remembered it. He tilted his staff in her direction. She seems to have felt part of the force that was hidden in it. Rin was surprised when she heard about it. Ainson spent a staff in the air, and a bright strip of light was drawn behind him. He said it is a sign. They moved the right road. 20 years ago, he defeated the demon's sword, but he was on the edge between life and death. His forces no longer obeyed him. That is why he hid almost all of his magic in different secret places. This is what led them to a tree wrapped in thick vines. The hero touched a staff to the tree, and at the same moment the creeper was shown around him with a bright light. Rin was scared when a ball of light suddenly appeared in front of her. She immediately called her censor, not understanding what happened. Ainson reassured the girl. The light ball gradually changed to a paper sheet, on which a condition was written to unlock her strength. The book attached to the staff is revealed. The sheet broke inside, and the book closed immediately. The girl thought that her teacher got her strength again. Ains looked at the pages and was convinced that he thought. On the last page it was stated that the ritual was over, and the main character now received a new skill in strengthening strength. Ains smiled and thought that all his strength seemed to return to him. Rin is sincerely happy. Now her teacher has become even more powerful than ever. The hero laughed. Now he really felt stronger. But this reinforcement touched only its individual skills, not all its strength. Rin thought that the whole journey was the tricky plan of Ison to regain her strength. But the teacher disagreed with that. He said they were here by accident, but in fact he only wanted to visit all his students. He sighed deeply, feeling a new force grew in it. It was impressive. But suddenly Rin was alert. Her ear shuddered. She seems to have heard some noise. She spoke dissatisfied with her tongue, and asked the teacher to act more carefully. Ains sighed sadly because he had long guessed that it would happen. The characters returned and saw in front of them 3 wild boars standing right on the trail. These were simple creatures. Lower trolls. The guy noticed that usually such trolls could be found closer to cities, not in the heart of the forest. Rin immediately felt how much fierce and aggression they radiate. She could no longer stand and wanted to cope with them. She barely raised her hand. A bright lightning spark flashed between her fingers. Ains just smiled and asked for permission on its own a little. It was a great chance to test his strength. He went forward, and the trolls immediately rushed to the attack. When the enemies came closer, the hero calmly and cold said that he would send them to hell. As soon as the enemies approached the hero, 3 fiery spears broke out around him. In an instant, they swept forward and punched the opponents. The trolls shouted in pain when the flames sharply swept their bodies. As a result, they burned just in place. Rin with delight noted that his magic remained as powerful as before. The guy noted that his flames became even stronger than what was in the world of spirits. Now the fire spear had such a power that he could destroy everything in his path. The flames did not die down until the trolls burned to the background. Only the ashes remained from them. But in one of the bodies, something was mysteriously shining. Ains had fun jumped and vigorously got a magic stone. These stones are extracted from the bodies of animals. They are very valuable. They can be profitable to sell or exchange, and then you will always have something in your hands. The hero suggested going to the nearest city because all the dangers were left behind. Ainson and Rin walked the path that stretched next to the transparent river. The guy noted that the road became flat and neat, and the water in the river was surprisingly clean and pleasant. It seemed that over the years this place became only better. He breathed fresh air to full breaths. He smiled and said that this silence gave him peace. Rin also agreed with that. Suddenly, the silence broke an unfamiliar voice. In the field someone was rustling in the grass, looking for something important. He shouted that he had lost a thing. The girl was very worried because she understood that if the warehouse would not open, everyone could be threatened with a real danger. Seeing the main characters, she apologized for breaking the silence and broke without warning. She apologized for the inconvenience and wondered if none of them saw a key with a bright, multicolored pattern. I gestured what the key was about, but Rin and Ains were just shaking their heads. They just came and saw nothing like that. The girl sighed heavily and said quietly, "That's where it came." There was very little time, and she was confused, not knowing how to act on. She grabbed her head and began to think again where the key could go. It was sure that he should be here somewhere. Ains and Rin were just looking at. They looked at each other and immediately understood everything without a word. We need to act together. The heroes said that if they allow, they will gladly help find the key. The girl was very happy, but did not understand how to accept this help. She did not want to bother others because she knew that everyone had their troubles, but Ains just smiled and said that it would take a little time. In addition, he had a strange feeling that the girl was finding him. Her look was astonished. She remembered how she had recently collected medicinal herbs here. But then cobalt settled in these places, and she decided to get rid of it. It was at this moment that the chain broke off, and the girl, not even having time to look, lost the key. Ains understood everything and asked for a little time. He leaned to the ground and looked at the girl. He asked her to answer his words and tell where the color key went. The girl saw that the body of the hero suddenly lit up and worried about everything with him. Ison asked if she paid attention to the disappearance in this area, and pointed her hand on a small tree that grew nearby. The girl uncertainly agreed with him and said he was right. She thought that the hero had already found the key, but he just smiled. In fact, he only knows where to look for him. It turned out that when she ran behind a cobalt, her chain with the key caught on a branch of a fallen tree. The guy pointed to the old fallen tree lying near the bushes and suggested that the girl look there. She listened to him and went in the direction of the tree. Seeing her color key on the earth, she suddenly rejoiced and did not restrain her joy. He was really here. She sincerely thanked the heroes for their help. But Ains smiled and said that gratitude was not needed, because in fact, she found it first. The girl apologized and asked with interest about the magic she just saw. It seemed to her that thanks to this magic he could see the past, or even look into the future. However, Ainson explained that this is not a complex magic. This ability to find lost is in many, although it is really very useful. The spirit of the earth retains all the memories, as it ran after cobalt, and as the key accidentally caught. The girl thought that the guy was probably a fortune teller, but he immediately denied, saying that he was only heard the voice of nature. For her, this magic was new and unknown, because almost no one had such abilities before his disappearance. The girl realized that Ainson was one of those who could call the spirits. She wanted to find out the names of these people, then thank them. Then the guy called himself and his student Lina. She thanked them both, and wondered why they were looking for a new home or just traveling. The guy explained that they were going to stay for a short time. Then the girl invited them to the garden of an alchemist in the guild when she appeared free time to thank for help. She thanked again for his support and believed that she would definitely see him again. Ainson gained her gaze and smiled, noticing how much energy in it. Rin rejoiced. The key was found, and the teacher remained as good as it was still. The guy said he had a great mood today. He rejoices in every new trip because it is a real adventure for him. Rin smiled and added that all the difficulties are easier to overcome with a good mood and a smile. Over time, they reached the city of Sagatel. Rin said that everything was calm in the city and did not interfere with them. They were easy to go inside. The hero pleased it, because the building where they went was standing exactly where they before. They reached the Global Guild, which turned out to be even larger than the previous one. A global guild is an organization that collects information about every specialist around the world. During registration, everyone receives a global card. It looks like a certificate. Thanks to her, you can turn to the guards by introducing a traveler or someone else. Rin remembered that Guildmaster told about it in his letter. She chose her profession after talking to the teacher. When the branch in the old town was updated, the crowds disappeared, and security became much better. Everyone was very grateful for it. Ains recalled that it really was. He remembered how long ago he discussed it with Rin, and now he gladly saw that everything turned out exactly as they dreamed. The girl approached the rack and welcomed the next visitor. She smiled warmly, greeting them in a global guild, and wondered what could be useful. The guy also smiled and asked to make a guild card for them. The girl asked if an international model was needed and asked why she needed. Ainson said he wanted to go on a journey around the world. Hearing the words of Ison, the girl looked amazed. She immediately suggested that he try himself as an adventure seeker. Ainson became strange. The girl looked surprised by his choice. She sincerely confessed that almost no one dared to become an adventurer during her work. He mentioned that the guild card during registration opens a whole list of professions. When you choose one of them, you immediately have the right to work as a guild specialist. Previously, only 30% of adventure seekers actually went on a trip and participated in tasks. The girl smiled and confessed that she lacked the courage that they could boast of. She receded for being distracted and gave the questionnaire, asking to enter her name and profession you dream of. Rin took the form and looked in surprise. There were so many names of different professions on the sheet. Ainson noticed her confusion and understood the cause. Rin saw the same for the first time. Most likely she was already told about it in the temple. In a special questionnaire you need to choose one or even several professions. Ainson was certain. In addition to the fact that he was a prophet and a scientist, he still had 4 or even 5 different crafts. His old map burned down during the battle with God of Evil, so he was genuinely happy when he learned that he could now get a new one. Looking at the list of professions, the guy suddenly lost. The girl immediately noticed that something was worried. He said quietly, "There is no such profession as the prophet." The administrator was surprised. This guy really was going to enroll as a prophet? The guy didn't understand why it was so important. Then the girl quietly said that the last prophet died 15 years ago, and since then everyone believes that the prophets had disappeared forever. Ains smiled and scratched his back, thinking that apparently, in her words, there is a truth. The girl warned him, "If you choose this profession, the souls of the dead will begin to follow, and even a reaper may appear." "But," she said, "there is something more frightening." Rin felt anxiety after these words, and Ainson wanted to learn more. The administrator did not hide the surprise. It was strange for her how easy he said. For many years the king has issued such decrees on its own. If someone says he is a prophet, it is necessary to announce it right away. After that, the city's protection and members of the guild should immediately come out and accompany such a person. Rin was almost laughing out loud, and Ainson just smiled because he did not take it seriously. The girl explained, "If he is really a prophet, he will definitely be protected. Once upon a time there was a similar case when one impostor was detained, and this caused a great scandal. It was true. But it is not necessary to talk about it." Ains looked at Rin. She just looked at him silently, waiting for him to say. The guy replied that they consider all this just a joke. He will choose another profession and thanked for the warning. The registrar smiled in response, hoping that her words were really useful. She confessed that her joke was weird, but the guy himself said he was a bold traveler. Ains couldn't admit it, really. He did not want patrols to go through the city at all. And in general, as it seemed, the king acted too decisively. He decided to choose something simple and invisible, a job that does not attract superfluous attention, but makes it possible to travel. So he noted in the questionnaire, "Priest." The girl smiled and said that as soon as he was filling in the questionnaire, she would immediately get her card. She asked to wait a few minutes and put an empty card on the table. She lifted the seal and immediately put it on both documents. All form data automatically appeared on the card. She handed Ainson the document. Now everything was officially. He became a new adventure in the global guild. The guy took the map with a smile and thanked for his support. As soon as she received the card, the girl kindly invited him to sit at the table standing at the end of the hall. Ains did not fully realize what she wanted from him. Then the girl raised a wooden tray with 5 balls. She put the device on the table. Ainson asked what it was. The girl smiled and explained that it was a device that helps to study magical energy. If he did not know it, he probably first made a map. The girl again remembered his strange joke. The guy smiled, explaining that there was an error. He simply held old views on the guild, which remained before the reforms after the war. The girl explained that now when receiving a new card, everyone should take a magical test. After that, a person is assigned a rank, from S to CAW. It helps to choose the work that is right for you, while reducing the risks. The hero remembered that his student had already mentioned it in his letter. Once upon a time he designed this device himself and never saw how he works. The girl smiled and said that the system was created by a guild advisor. He was one of 100 heroes. She confessed that she would sincerely like to thank him and his mentor. Ains smiled. It seemed strange to him that the invention was created by his former student. He wondered what to do next. The girl pointed to the right edge of the board and said that it should be touched. Ainson leaped her hand forward to where she showed. She said that the number of broken balls determines the power of magic. If there is only one, it is the rank K. If all 5 crashed, this is already rank G. Usually newcomers get the rank N, but she did not have time to agree, as all the balls suddenly exploded at the same time. Ainson calmly said the surprised girl, "Yes, they all crashed." The people around them were surprised. They all agitated with surprise. Some from the crowd exclaimed that a new priest has just broken all the crystals. This is rare. The girl agreed that Ainson possessed extraordinary magical power and awarded him the rank of G. The guy wondered what to do him now. She replied that he would wait a little. Everyone was watching him carefully without hiding their interest. She brought another board on which 3 balls lay. This board shows the ranks F and D, but Asen touched the board. All 3 balls immediately flew in different directions. The noise was rising in the hall. No one could believe that the newcomer had passed the rank of D. Einstein noticed that even more people gathered around. He was wondering how many D-rang owners were. The administrator came with a new board, which had different marks. S, S, A, B, and incomprehensible inscription, TS. The hero decided not to waste time, so he immediately touched this board. The crystal, which was far from right to the right, suddenly cracked under his hand. Everyone around the surprise as never happened. Ains could not believe that everything went so far. The girl was stunned by how quickly the guy reached level B. She realized that it should definitely be reported to the castle, but at first she had to take herself. She was confused and could not find the necessary report. In addition, it was necessary to find out how to pass the document to the king properly. And then, another crystal broke. In the hall, everyone was numb from shock. Eisen not stopped and break even more. The hero looked at the last 2 balls and realized it could be really dangerous. He was able to keep the magic so that the board does not fly into pursuits. He succeeded. 2 balls remained whole and intact. The girl decided that everything was over. So, the measurement ended, and now it officially assigned him the rank of TS. The administrator was surprised that she could not believe his eyes. The hero received the rank of TS in just a few minutes. The people around were amazed. The newcomer was able to surprise everyone. His priest skill was much exceeding the usual level. Ainson waved his hand for goodbye and sincerely thanked everyone for his support. He was glad to choose the crystal TS. After all, if he used the crystal B, then everything would become known to the king immediately, and it would cause extra fuss. Ainson hoped that he would be able to continue the path without unnecessary hassle. If, of course, there would be no real trouble. The girl noted that a little more, and they would have reached the rank of B. However, even so is a great result. Ainson thanked her for his support and promised to take into account. The girl asked him to stay for a short time. Guild prepared him a farewell gift. So Ainson finally received recognition and became a real sorcerer. Rin also received her card. The administrator suggested that the magical power in Rin is even greater than the rank of TS. The hero believed that the power of Rin was really special, and she believed that she would be able to follow Eisen. Among other students, she was hardly known, but the girl often repeated that she was a great joy for her to travel with the sensation. At that moment, the girl approached them again and apologized for the delay. A man stood next to her. Ains became interested in who he was. The stranger approached the administrator of the cafe and asked him to tell him everything that had happened. Dominic Sand is an experienced priest E, which has 10 years of work. Ainson got a great opportunity to work with him as a gift. Dominic met a newcomer with a friendly smile and promised to help him get acquainted with the world of spirits. Ains did not hide astonishment and asked what they mean. The girl said that after receiving the map, each newcomer passes a free initial lesson on which she gets acquainted with the basics. It's really great. In addition, the training is conducted by real masters, and not just distribute textbooks. The guild seeks to avoid rivalry between members, so they invite experienced professionals. This approach helps to maintain trust in guilds. The idea was suggested by Felicia. Although she confessed that it was the advice of her mentor, the administrator always thought that this teacher is very smart and outstanding. Ainson felt inconvenience. In no other place he was treated. He remembered how Felicia once sent him a letter with an important question. Now he saw with his own eyes what his advice has led to. She helped her find her true calling. Although all the sorcerers were far away, Rin smiled and thought that everything was going as it should be. Einson accepted the proposal of Katya-san and asked Dominic to become his guardian. Dominic was genuinely glad, who was able to communicate with others. First thought that he would not be accepted because of the earring. After getting acquainted, they went to the Hall F. There, Dominic stopped in front of the student and said that the magician of the spirits is a person who communicates with the spirits and can use their strength. Usually, the hero negotiates with or refers to the spirits to get their strength. Hearing these words, Dominic unfolded his back, and suddenly a bright flow of energy escaped from it, which immediately wrapped his hand. Ainson expressed the guess that he saw the spirit. Dominic confirmed with a smile. Everything is true. It was the spirit of light with which he concluded an agreement. His spirits helped cartographers and scouts. They found demonic creatures and helped them to identify. Artisu-san worked as an adventure seeker, so the company had fewer tasks for him. But this did not diminish the importance of this profession. Ainson thanked the Dominica and now felt more confident and better prepared. Dominic suggested moving on. Now he will explain how you can communicate with the spirit. He looked at his hand and created a magical ball. A bright and shiny ball was lit in his hand, and the spirit flew instantly to absorb it. Ains expressed a guess that it could be a way of communication. Dominic confirmed this, explaining, so they feed the spirits. If you treat the spirit with magical food, it will help in response. It happens that such magic is even able to send the disease to the enemy. The hero understood that the spirits were always turning everything they receive. Dominic hoped that Eisen had not forgotten the spell, and heard confirmation from him. The hero decided to create a magical ball, and he succeeded from the first time. Dominic was amazed at its huge size and power. Only the magician T.S. Ainson said it was due to the Dominic. Even the spirit seems to recognize it. Dominic laughed, thanked for his support, and summoned his spirit. Ainson understood the behavior of the spirit, that there is a special connection between him and the Dominic. Dominic explained that this was due to their long joint journey. Then Ains wondered if Dominic was actually talking to his spirit. Dominic did not understand what it was about. Then Ains said, he always feels as if his spirit was communicating with him. For Dominic, it became a real shock. He remembered how the soap was smoking when he was caught. If Eisen really realizes what it means, then he is really extraordinary. Dominic did not restrain himself and asked the hero what the squeak and the ripple of the spirit were. He really wanted to understand what was talking about. Ainson clearly heard the voice of the spirit, who gave him gratitude for Dominic for his sincere respect and gratitude. In addition, the spirit does not matter how many magical balls the magic will spend. With this message, he was very surprised by his master. Dominic could not keep his joy. His spirit seemed to jump, and he thought it was probably just a joke. Ains smiled, because he only conveyed the words of the spirit, not inventing anything. Dominic looked at him and exclaimed with delight that he was just incredible. Understanding the language of spirits is extremely difficult. Only a very high level has such a gift. Aisen struck that such a technique really exists, and Dominic confirmed. He studied it for many years, but still knows only a few words. He was able to recognize emotions by movements, but on this his abilities ended. People said that some lucky ones were born with the ability to see spirits. He could not imagine that he would ever meet such a student with his own eyes. Eisen seemed to be a good man, because he so sincerely spoke to him pleasant words. He apologized, explaining that he was just much surprised. He was convinced that he would not hear anything new, but Eisen was able to surprise him. The lesson ended, but even the student was able to show him something important. At the end, Dominic noted that he would grow a true magician of spirits, and promised to write the best recommendations for him as a mentor. He confessed that he did not manage in conversation with the spirits. Ainson thought that even this is the ability to communicate with them is an incredibly valuable achievement. Dominic apologized for not having time to teach more, but added that they were both colleagues now. Ains shook his hand and thanked him sincerely, because he was a real honor for him to get acquainted with such an experienced magician. Rin waited patiently when he returned and met him with a warm smile. As long as he was not, Kaisha gave her a map of the city where she marked all the hotels. The guy praised Rin, they say. It was time to choose a place to stay overnight. The registrar suggested that there were many good races near the guild. Ainson chose a cozy place carefully, because they had to spend a whole week here. Rin was agreed with him and even interested in the bartender about the exchange rate. It turned out that in 20 years he had almost never changed. They had enough money to live in a good hotel for 3 months. In addition, Rin had a special magic bag, which had a lot more things in place than one could think at first glance. Well, she took him with her. While there is financial support, you cannot worry about money. And Ainson, as an adventure seeker, will be able to share news about unknown places and sell this information to cartographers. Suddenly, a girl ran up to them. She wanted to make sure that she was facing Ainson and Rin. The guy looked at her with a question in her eyes. It was the girl who lost the key. Her name is Eureka, and she was engaged in alchemy. She was genuinely rejoiced when she finally met them. In the guild, everyone was just about it. It seemed to her that their meeting was a real gift of fate. Ainson asked Yuri if they really learned so many people. She smiled and said that she didn't need to contact her so much. She maintains a good relationship with almost all guild workers, and has already heard that 2 people with impressive magical abilities have just registered. Recalling that these people helped her find the key, she finally convinced them. They were they. She asked if they really became adventure seekers, and the boys confidently confirmed it. Then she suggested that they go to their store, which is located in the alchemical garden. They can find everything: alchemical ingredients, charming artifacts, and even more. She was certain that something was right for them here. Ains did not watch. He also wanted to see everything with his own eyes. However, he emphasized that the hotel should first look for, as long as there are free numbers. But here, Eureka explained that her shop is also a small hotel. She pointed to them on the map where the garden is. Ainson agreed that the place was very beautiful and decided to stay there. The girl insisted on her own accommodation, even if they had other plans. This key was of great importance to her. Ainson agreed to her proposal and decided to stay in their home. He turned to Rin, asking if she did not mind, and the girl gladly agreed. For her, the main thing was to be near the teacher. Eureka assured that they would accept guests with special warmth. After passing only a few minutes from the guild, they were near Eureka's store. This store was very spacious, and Eureka proudly said that her shop is the largest in the whole city. Above the door hung a plate with the inscription, "Garden of Alchemimics." When the characters entered, the sellers met Yorick warmly, because they did not expect it to return so quickly. The girl smiled and said quietly that she met a special person. Ainson of Rin was surprised, because they did not even realize that she was president. Then Yorick honestly acknowledged that she really hid them. In fact, she manages an alchemical company called Garden Alchemist. She introduced herself officially and warmly greeted, saying that the Council of Acquaintance, the characters settled at the first free table. One of the employees was shared with a colleague of news. It was this magician of the spirits of his time that saved their president Yorick. The rumors have already flew through the city. They say, 2 special people have joined the guild. One of the boys said their president has power, though sometimes it seems a little scattered. He wanted to know how the heroes supported Yorick, and whether these rumors were true. Ains heard this conversation and looked at the boys. Rin quietly said that everything was happening in the same way as once in a guild. The hero was surprised how quickly the rumors fly out, and the guild was very close. Eureka approached them and said that the room was almost ready. She appealed to Ison to talk, and he agreed. Despite her high status, Eureka went out of the city on her own to gather healing herbs. Ison surprised this behavior. Then Yorick explained. She wanted to show everyone that she would cope without help. These herbs were necessary for an important potion, so the girl decided to do everything on her own. Finally, everything came into place. While they were talking, a man approached Yorick. He apologized for the inconvenience and sincerely thanked for his support. Eureka smiled and said that everything was fine, because she has lost the key to the magical composition. She asked to give gratitude to the main characters. They helped her very much. The man bowed, sincerely thanking not only Yuritsa, but also Ison from Rin, because they helped to save key negotiations for the company. He repeated his gratitude again, knowing how much it was. Ainson believed that he did not do anything unusual. He just found the key. But suddenly Yorick fell silent and smiled. Ains couldn't understand what had happened. Eureka apologized and confessed that she was suddenly sleeping with a strange idea. When she looked at Asen, she thought a man who once trained her. They had something in common in behavior. Ains did not resist and asked who was this coach. Eureka said she was called Master. This person taught her to go forward and not stop, regardless of status. It turned out that this mentor was one of the 100 heroes. She now heads the University of Magic. Rin was surprised to ask, "Is it about Mel-San?" Eureka confirmed. About her. Ainson mentioned that the sorcerer Mel was always a very lively and full energy of a girl. Instead of studying in the main campus in the capital, Yorick chose a branch near the house. She could not stay in one place for a long time. She traveled a lot, and in recent years she worked at the university near the city. The southern branch of the magical university in Sagatal became its home. The young employee went to the president's office and handed Ms. Chokros a weekly guild report. A girl with long hair and in a big hat thanked and said she would look at everything right now. She took advantage of her hair to pick up the report and quickly looked at it. The employee told her that a suspicious man appeared. He wanted to meet her, but his face was hidden by a magical mask. Chokros said she knew this person and confidently allowed him to miss him without check. A tall man came into the room, and the girl smiled warmly, because Mr. Duke rarely leaves the capital. The king took off his mask, smiled warmly, and said he was nearby, so he decided to visit. In addition, I wanted to touch the topic of Master Asen. He really believed that the biggest dream of all students would finally come true, Recently, people have begun to say that a very strong prophet appeared in the world. Mel was amazed. Does their master return? However, Duke explained that the divination failed to determine whether it was really Os. When and what happens remains a mystery. Chokros lowered her head, upset. She realized that Duke's precision was almost inferior to the master. No one knew for sure who would appear, but the gift of prediction was extremely valuable. The girl really wanted to meet this person, especially if it was their master. Duke explained that the guilds have already received special orders and are preparing for his arrival. She realized that he should end all her business as soon as possible to greet Master Eisen. At that moment, the luster of curiosity appeared in the eyes of the king. He also wanted to meet him. When it came to work, they mentioned that the chief master of the guild in the city was a real pioneer. Chokros only confirmed this. It is not easy to be a master, but it gives real pleasure. And she teaches children. She learned every week from the reports how many specialists of different ranks joined the guild. This season, the figures were extremely good. The girl reported that there are many people in the city with a level D, and even a few of the TS. The king was happy because the residents wanted to work in favor of the capital. However, the Kororos had not very good news. In recent months, more and more monsters have appeared around the city. The forces of the soldiers were enough, but every day the magicians became smaller. Duke realized that it could threaten security. Therefore, he asked the Koros if he returned to the capital to consider the opportunity to send to the task of experienced magicians. She accepted the proposal, allowing him to decide himself, and promised to send all the reports in letters. Duke intended to write a letter to Master Eisen immediately, and she understood it. But of course, it would be much better if the master himself came here. The next morning, Ains woke up in his room and immediately noticed that something around was wrong. He looked at the bed nearby and saw that Rin was still sleeping. Usually it would already be woven. In her dreams, she quietly said something about the censor and smiled involuntarily. Eisen smiled gently and decided to give her a little more time so she could sleep. But a sudden girl woke up and rubbed her eyes. The guy was glad that she had already woke up. He sat down at the table and heard Rin began to apologize that she had fallen. However, Ainson assured that it is not necessary to apologize. Everything is fine. But Rin could not put up with this. She believed that the student should take care of her teacher, and instead only exhausted herself. The guy decided that the girl should not blame himself. Rin, meanwhile, remembered how all their classmates were very worried about him and decided to read their letters. He noted that Rin still looked exhausted after yesterday. Her whipped schedule and frequent trips have significantly affected her. Rin, in response, noted that Sensei was using magic while traveling. She dreamed of waking up with him. He is very durable, so she needs to get used to his pace. The guy decided that he really should be stronger. He had no doubt Rin would definitely make every effort to achieve it. The hero agreed, and then noticed that she had already come to her senses. After breakfast, he offered to stroll the city and its surroundings. Rin was sincerely happy about this idea, because she had long dreamed of going on a journey with her teacher. Ains laughed and suggested that they all stroll together with the city of Sigil. The city greeted them with a homon and a crowd of people. They slowly traveled through the streets, looking into food and shops filled with flowers. Rin even treated the sensation of fruit juice that can only be found in the city of pioneers. They decided to taste all the dishes, and each of them was surprisingly delicious. After that, they went to the horse farm and then went to a huge statue standing in the heart of the city. At the end of the walk, the heroes rose to the roof of the alchemist garden, from where they opened a wonderful panorama of the city and the surrounding nature. Ainson agreed, because there was an incredible landscape around, and silence and peace were dominating. Rin was genuinely happy that Eureka gave them permission to rise to the roof. Ainson thought that the hill was probably a branch of the Magic University, although he did not notice it. The girl said that she is probably talking about the same university in which he works now. The hero recalled that Kororos was an extremely strong witch. He really wanted her to meet the girls. Rin was delighted with this idea, and happily agreed that it was a wonderful opportunity. He did not find reason to give up. Communicating with good people is always useful. If the sensei Ainson insists, Rin will gladly agree to get acquainted with the Kororos. The bell sounded and the characters immediately mentioned that they were mentioned in one of the letters. It turned out to be a noon bell of the Global Guild. Ains smiled, looked at the clock and realized that their walk lasted longer than they planned. He invited Rin to have lunch together in the guild, and she did not refuse. In addition, it was here that special dishes were prepared. which you will not try anywhere else. Ainson confirmed that vegetables and meat were really delicious, as the student told in his letter. The fertile lands around were a great place to graze cattle, the meat of which was cooked here. The hero smiled and confessed that she was happy to be here. This is the brightest moment of his entire journey. But a friendly women's greeting was suddenly heard. Kaisha's registrar was glad when she saw that they were still here. She laughed and sincerely asked them for one service. Ains listened carefully to her words. The girl said that on the farm lands the spirit of the wind lifts a real storm. Farmers lack the strength to stop it, because only a magician who knows in the spirits can cope with this element. So she decided to turn to Aisen. The situation was very serious. The hero did not hesitate and said he had to act immediately. If you do not stop the spirit, it will burn all the fields and gardens. No one has been injured, but if you delay, it can have terrible consequences. Ainson thought a little and said confidently that he understands everything well. The letter from the Kororos stated that university students were extremely gifted. It would be a pity if something happened to them. Therefore, Aisen promised, they will definitely help. Kaisha was glad, because this task was created for T.S. Aisen and Rina-sama level. The hero smiled and promised that he would make every effort. Rin also promised to help. Kaisha thanked and invited them to go with her. She explained that she would now introduce them to a person who will tell everything and go on the road with them. Together, they climbed the stairs to the administrative hall. They were already waiting for their familiar Dominic. The characters looked at each other for a few seconds. Ainson politely congratulated Dominic, but he immediately asked not to be so official. For him, great joy and pride to cooperate together. The hero said he could talk to the spirits, and therefore hopes for the help of Dominic. Dominic also trusted the spirits, and believed that the task would be successful. Dominic agreed that this task was not simple. Ainson turned to the registrar to find out more details. The girl unfolded the map and pointed to the forest lying between the farm and the garden. It was in that place that a storm always appeared. They suggested somehow reassured the spirit. It was possible to try to humiliate it or drive it. Everything depended on the decision of the characters themselves. Rin suggested using any available way. Kaisha agreed with this, because the spirit was very powerful, and it was she who was ready to entrust the matter. The storm suddenly rises in the forest, but no living soul sees the spirit itself. Nothing is known about his strength and origin. Ains could not understand why everything was so sharpened. He knew that the spirits never angry just like that. They always have their own reason for anger. The administrator assured that everything has its cause. However, the scouts learned that everything happened unexpectedly. Perhaps the spirit was angry because of something that they have not yet guessed. They are not going to destroy the spirit. You must first reassure it and find out what happened. In addition, they will pay for useful information. Ainson explained that it is necessary to know why the spirit is angry and try to reassure him. This task is not simple. It is not lower than level D. Rin was shocked when she found out that it was true. Kaisha confirmed it. The spirit does not respond to ordinary physical attacks, and the sources of his anger can be a lot. This task seems even more difficult. Dominic smiled. He has been working as a priest for 10 years, but even for him it is a real test. He was surprised that Ainson and Rin remained completely calm, as if nothing had happened. They looked confident and calm, and Dominic thought it was because of their high status. But in his soul, he still was a little anxious. Although sending a newcomer with TS rank to Mission D is almost as self-confident as to call himself 10, Dominic understood that Ainson was not really a smoky but calm and reliable comrade. Ainson was heard, and immediately suggested going to the task without delay. Kaisha warned everyone. The guild has a recovery potion for an emergency. She asked to behave carefully. Ainson, Rin, and Dominic left the city and walked into the woods, approaching the very center of the storm. A huge funny funnel rose before them. The crazy wind flew to the sky. The characters raised their heads up. Such a strong wind did not have to worry. Ainson wondered that this tornado is not yet a real element. The intelligence officers said that the spirit was hiding in its center, and Dominic confirmed these words. Dominic reached forward and called the spirit of Valup to defend himself with the help of the strength of the spirits. The little spirit was written and instantly turned into a shield that resembled a strong shell. The protective ball has grown and covered all present. Dominic suggested that he promised to lead them himself. Ainson activated a protective spell, nodded Rin, and Dominic agreed to go forward. The hero praised the dome that created Dominic, because the fragments did not interfere with the passage. Dominic thanked and sincerely rejoiced that he could be useful. Caution was very important, because just over the heads of the storm, and the winds roared like a real tornado. Ison called Dominica to sit side by side. Dominic was surprised by such a request, but it was at this moment that the hero heard a warning stone from the spirit. Something was approaching. Dominic did not even have time to say how a wooden circle was enlightened near his head. Seeing a sharp circle, Dominic was frightened. Death was very close. How could Ison predict this? But the guy could not predict the future. He just listened to the voices of the spirits. Even during the storm, he continued to hear their whispers. Ains smiled, and Dominic, surprised, confessed that Ison was striking every time. The hero was convinced that everything was well with his friend. Dominic asked permission to stand up, and Ainson allowed him to do it. They moved forward and finally saw her. The egg lay right in front of them. It seems that it was a tornado. Dominic could not determine his strength. The egg began to extend, and a dark gap opened in the center. Inside the cocoon sat a creature similar to a ghost girl. Dominic froze in surprise. Before him was the spirit that had a human likeness. He immediately realized that her magic was very powerful, because it was an older spirit. The woman opened her eyes and looked carefully at them. Dominic said that these spirits are able to change their shape and hibernate. Because of this, the scout could not correctly determine their level. Older spirits live only in special places. These can be holy mountains or magic sources. No one has the right to attack them without a sufficient level of force. The Maze F level cannot cope with such creatures. This requires at least level B, Magi B. Dominic, being an experienced magician, decided to protect newcomers, because for them still just begins. The spirit was slowly approaching, not showing signs of hostility. However, Dominic, in order not to risk it, still prepared protection. As he raised his hand, the girl burrow immediately targeted his finger. Suddenly, a powerful wind came up. The spirit began a magical attack, and Dominic rejected. His body rejected a few meters, and he crashed into a tree. Dominic realized that it was a slap of the wind. Only a protective field rescued him. Otherwise, he would not have resisted. The spirit released incredible only with the light movement of the finger. Full of hope, Dominic raised his eyes. Dominic exhausted, fortunately. Only he was injured. In his thoughts, he was about to go back and distract the enemy on himself to give others the opportunity to escape. But he could not rise. His body was not obeyed, as if it were paralyzed. The spirit raised his hand again, moving slowly this time. Dominic suddenly realized that the real target was not him, but Ains. He immediately screamed to escape, but the hero only smiled good-naturedly and asked not to worry. The moment has come to use the staff cut technique. The spirit pointed to Aeson with his finger, but Aeson cleverly jumped sideways. Some of the blows flashed past him, and he cleansed his wrist with his staff. Dominic stared at Aeson in surprise when he asked if he was fine with him. The amazed magician did not restrain himself and asked how he got to do it. The hero said that he took advantage of the magic of prediction and changed his staff so that he could cut the air like a weapon. However, he did not explain anything further. Ains waved his staff and once again reflected the attack of the confused spirit. The hero smiled and invited his hand to move on. The spirit did not stop attacking, but Ainson calmly reflected his attack. He lifted the staff and immediately cut the next attack in half. Meanwhile, Rin confidently reflected the stones that fell from above, and this was very impressed by Dominic with its agility. It turned out that the girl was beating in a short distance. She not only defended herself, but also talked about Aeson's strength. However, Dominic referred to her power. The magician sighed heavily, realizing that they could hardly change something. Ordinary attacks do not act on the older spirit. Only the adventurers of rank A are able to fight it on an equal footing. Ains just smiled. They didn't even think about a fight. Dominic did not trust his intentions and doubted that he really came to just talk, because it was too risky. Dominic was worried that the spirit could not want to speak to them or accidentally harm them, but Ainson reassured everyone and promised that he would try to solve this problem. The hero came closer to the spirit, said politely, and politely asked a little time to talk. The girl-man wiped her eyes in surprise when she saw him quite close. She raised her hand and pointed her finger. "It's you!" Ainson immediately realized that his suspicions were confirmed. She really was able to speak. In her eyes, a smart shine appeared. She seemed to have started suspecting a boy. Dominic noticed that the spirit was fun. In case of danger, he decided that he could distract her so that his friends could escape. The spirit closed her eyes because she did not like the human language. She wants to talk only to those who are able to speak the language of spirits. She had already heard about him. A prophet named Ainson stood in front of her, the one who was able to overcome the gods and demons, saved the Queen of Spirits, and mastered the magic of the present spirit of the very spirit. The hero first lost, but still agreed. The girl was glad. She was admired for a long time. Ainson was surprised because he did not expect that she knew about him. She said that in the world of spirits, he became a legend. He is all respected and appreciated for his time he saved many. And the girl's mentor was a relative of the late emperor of the spirits. Ainson heard this for the first time. Yes, he defeated evil spirits, but call himself the hero of the world of spirits is a bust. In addition, Ainson comes from another world. The older spirit smiled. She was asleep, so she did not even notice the hero at first. In his thoughts, he compared her with a cat, which cozily curled up with a ball. Dominic was surprised to listen to the loud and quiet sounds nearby, and could not understand if everything was really fine. But Ains just smiled in a calming way. The spirit was much kinder than it seemed at first, and just asked him to give him some time. Everything happened exactly as the girl burrowed. She realized that her language, full of magic, was usually not easy for people. However, Ains spoke easily and confidently. The prophets were born to speak this language, so it is not surprising that Aisen had skillfully. However, now he was interested in why she caused such excitement. The girl did not fully realize that she wanted to say Ainson, but thought that it was a light breeze she planned to warn people. But Ainson pointed up, making it clear that it is not a breeze for people, but a real hurricane. Each race sees the world in its own way. If she really intended to attack, she would have long released a powerful wave of wind. But he realized she wanted to warn people about the threat, and it really turned out to be true. The spirit intended to warn everyone about dangerous demonic animals in the forest that spreads poisonous miasma. Miasma is a special magical energy that makes the demon stronger. It can change the body or soul, depending on how much to get it. It was Miasma who used the evil god when he absorbed it. He scattered parts of his body around the world. Ainson already guessed that some demons have absorbed these fragments. The girl confirmed his guess. When the beast ate part of the evil god, he had a special body that began to produce miasm. That is why everything happens that way. The king of spirits told her not to let people into these creatures, so she lifted the winds to scare and drive away people. Now Ainson realized why the tornado was needed. He asked to talk about the worst demonic animals. The girl explained that it was a horned mole. He looked just like a regular mole, only on his forehead stuck a great horn. Although this mole was not great, he was able to hide great. She could not hit him because her magic was not accurate enough. Dominic noted that Ainson was very surprised, and he himself could not be surprised at how Ainson was talking calmly with a high-level spirit. He did not understand what others were talking about, so he decided to rely on the prophet. Suddenly, he saw the girl making a strange gesture. It seemed that she didn't like something. The atmosphere became more tense. Meanwhile, the spirit confessed that she was tired of unsuccessful attacks and decided to rest for a moment. Then it became clear why she remained here for so long. Rin smiled and advised Dominica a little rest, assuring him that Ains would be able to resolve everything. Ainson suggested that she stop her hurricane, and he will take care of the beast himself. The spirit was very surprised. Can he really do it? If so, she will be grateful to him. She warned him. If he does not cope, the storm will return. And if he wins, she will certainly thank him. And the moment of farewell has come. The girl climbed into the sky and quickly disappeared behind the horizon. Dominic looked at her in the trace. He had never seen someone so simple to find a common language with a powerful spirit. The characters looked after her for a long time until her image disappeared in the sky. Dominic turned to Aisen and could not believe his eyes. This guy is truly wonderful. He managed to persuade the spirit to go, and for that he used only his words. The hero explained that he did not drive her out. In fact, she gave them the task, and he told in detail what had happened. Dominic realized that the spirit just wanted to protect people. He was ashamed of what he thought about her differently. Einstein reassured, asking not to blame himself because the situation was really difficult. Dominic sincerely thanked for his support. It became a little easier in the soul. He explained that their enemy was a horned mole. This is the mission of D ranking. Heeson added that even the monsters have their own levels of dangers. Demonic creatures that emit miasma are always stronger at one level. This mole has already reached TS level. Dominic realized that they are equal in force, so such an enemy really deserves respect. But a difficult battle awaited them ahead. Dominic decided to join because he agreed to this mission. Ainson did not hide astonishment, but he was happy to help because together they had a more chance of success. and Rin at that moment looked around carefully, feeling anxious. The girl suddenly heard an unusual sound that came from the depths of the forest. Dominic with delight noted that the hero knows where to find these creatures. Ains just smiled. The spirit has already suggested everything you need, and now you don't even have to look. Creatures go to them. Rin nodded, agreeing with Isan, and continued to look carefully at the forest. She pulled her blades, noticing that the monsters were already approaching them. Not far from them, from the ground and from the dense thicket, dark creatures came out that resembled horned moles. The hero decided that the one who goes behind everyone and looks bigger than others is probably their leader. Dominic agreed with this, and noticed that the wind subsided, and the creatures began to approach them directly. Since Dominic had a TS rank, he was convinced that he would handle himself, so he rushed forward. But Ains stopped him, putting his hand on his shoulder, and asked to wait a little. Dominic could not be squeezed. Not it was necessary to destroy them immediately so that the spirit did not relift the storm. The hero did not argue, but noted that the monster's actually much more than it seems. After these words, he hit his staff 3 times on the ground. Suddenly, new creatures began to emerge from the ground. Dominic was confused and did not know what to do. At least 20 creatures were moving in front of them. All slowly crawled closer. The higher spirit did not warn that there would be so many. Ainson realized that they multiplied due to Maius. Young beings were smaller, but they did not laugh. Although miasma does not speed up reproduction, new creatures were as dangerous as adults. Dominic warned that it is not necessary to fight them directly. It is necessary to find and destroy the source of miasma. Then all others will lose their strength. Ainson heard it, and rejoiced, because it opened new opportunities. But now it was unattainable. For the monster they looked like spirits, so they became desirable for them. Rin thought that the monster seeing something dangerous in them. So there is no doubt. The battle is inevitable. Although they are similar to ordinary moles, they are actually powerful demons. Ison warned, enemies are already nearby, you need to prepare immediately. And instantly the whole flock rushed forward, a crazy pressure at full speed. Dominic noticed a blow, but it was unclear how Ison was able to predict him. Maybe he was able to read other people's movements, but it was useless to guess now. There was no time for reflection. The man raised his hand and used the reception of light balls. From a small spark of energy, dozens of bright balls suddenly appeared that rapidly flew forward and punched enemies through. But this was not enough. Other creatures continued to fly forward. Dominic exclaimed, "They are very fast." One of the monsters suddenly rushed at him, jumping forward. Dominic mechanically raised his hand, but Ainson managed to seize the initiative. He struck and struck the mole strongly on his head. They survived. Ainson returned to Dominic and asked if everything was fine with him. Dominic nodded in response. The blows were strong, but he was holding on. But suddenly he saw another monster. He stood just behind Ainson. At the same moment, Rin rushed forward and cut the creature into pieces. The hero smiled and sincerely thanked his student. She only nodded quietly, as if saying that she was not needed. She was convinced that she would handle everything herself, but Ainson said that she had saved him and thanked it from the bottom of her heart. After that, they began to fight enemies together. Rin confessed that she liked when the touch was so serious. Dominica struck how confidently the girl kept in hand-to-hand combat. Ring only smiled cunningly, as if she wanted to say, "When I needed, I was at height." She asked her several monsters, even if there was no need. The hero noted that the creatures stopped and did not dare to approach. Probably their leader transmits the signal to retreat, using shocks in the soil. Ainson decided that he should end with them right now, until they have run away. He lifted his staff and turned to the air around, calling all his efforts to gather in a sharp blade. The blade from the air fell into a pack, cutting the monsters in half with a clean and powerful blow. The leader of the demons did not even have time to move out of place. His body was instantly cut like everyone else. Dominic expanded his eyes with surprise. Real magic unfolded in front of him. The trees collapsed directly on the dead bodies of the monster. Ison sighed reliefly. The place where miasma came out, finally eliminated. Dominic shouted in surprise that this spell is much stronger than the Storm of the Spirit. Even a magician with rank B could not do something like that. He asked which book the hero learned about this technique. Ains just smiled and said that he came up with it many years ago. The prophets usually received their magic either from special books or listening to the voices of the spirits that lived in holy places. There were still ancient collections of knowledge that the Emperor of Spirits once created. Ains studied, listening to his inner voice, which showed him the way to true strength. Dominic finally realized how special this guy is. Even an experienced master of rank and could not achieve such a result on his own. The hero said that he had very little time before entering the guild. Suddenly, the man ran up to them, breathing hard, and immediately attracted the attention of all present. The man smiled, thanking her sincerely for saving his ranch. Ainson immediately realized that the owner of these lands was in front of him. The owner confirmed it and explained that he asked for help from the guild and the university. I had to turn in 2 places at once. It was not cheap, but there were too many dangers around. The owner was glad that Ainson was here now. At this time, the hero noticed that Dominic behaved somehow strange. He wiped tears and almost fell, but Ainson quickly picked him up. Dominic quietly apologized. Magic took him more than he thought. Along with Ison and Rin, he seemed completely exhausted. The hero reassured the owner, saying that he would not reproach himself. Everyone has his own limit. The owner agreed with him and invited to try his own grown special vegetables. Ains has never heard of such things before, but the man explained to him that they were helping to renew the magical power. The characters were happy to accept the proposal. That was exactly what they need. The owner rejoiced and invited them to his home, which was very close. During lunch, the boys thanked the owner for their hospitality. The man just smiled warmly, so he expressed his gratitude for being saved. Ains thought that for the first time since the beginning of his adventures, he had heard such a sincere gratitude. And Dominic decided not to stay and went first. It was necessary to report on the successful completion of the task. Saying goodbye, he recalled again. If you have a report earlier, you can get a little more money. He also asked for permission to help with some work, because during the battle, in his opinion, he was little useful. Ainson did not deny because he was in no hurry. Soon they said goodbye to the farm and went on the way back. Ainson noted that vegetables really restore strength. Rin was happy to see Dominic recovering. The hero noticed that it resembles the action of light potion. He also remembered a letter from his student, who reported that he now has his own farm and grows charming plants there. The seeds of these plants received only separate, selected farmers. It was first investigated and then transferred to employees of the company. Ains smiled. At the end of the mission in his soul, there is a pleasant feeling. Apparently, for the first time in his life, he survived something like that. Suddenly, the book hidden in his staff shone with a bright light. Rin immediately guessed, something just awakened. The hero nodded in response. He may have left his strength here. Ainson lifted the staff and brought it to the stone. The bright light became even stronger. It was obvious that his power was concentrated here. The guy came closer and smiled. Today he was clearly happy. He performed the ritual to open the seal. The magic letter suddenly flew to the book, and it closed loudly. Rin was surprised how the strength quickly returned to him. However, Ainson said it was just an accident. The girl asked that he got. The hero looked at the page. His power of the prophecy has grown, and now covered even larger terrain. Rin realized that his prophetic gift was getting stronger. She always dreamed of seeing Ainson as he was on top of her strength. The mission was fulfilled. The dinner was very tasty. The forces returned. Everything was best possible. But now, it's time to get home. The guild administrator met them with relief and sincerely glad that everyone returned unharmed. The characters immediately understood. They are in front of them a team that was able to accomplish the most difficult and dangerous task. Everyone around joyfully celebrated the emergence of a new hero. The boys were confused for a moment, but Dominic appeared here and assured that they came exactly when they needed. The hero looked at him with surprise, and he answered that he had already reported. The administrator wondered if everyone was returning, because the report stated that no one was injured during the mission. Ains nodded, assured that everything was well with him. Rin hurried to add that they did not even get a single scratch. Hearing this, the administrator rejoiced even more. She looked truly happy, though she was very worried. The hero noticed that people around them did not look out of their eyes, and wondered why this happens. They were told that as soon as the team went, an urgent message from a magical university was received to the guild. The hero remembered how the farm owner really said that he turned to the university. The administrator explained that the guild has been working with the university for many years. They share knowledge and equipment, although there are sometimes delays. This is the situation with this request. Due to the appearance of the spirit and the large number of horned moles, which were exacerbated by miasma, this task has become more complicated than level B. Moreover, the spirit itself was very strong. There were only 3 people in this dangerous area. The guild was so excited that she was already preparing a rescue team. Everyone was amazed when Dominic returned unharmed. Einstein could not believe his eyes when the administrator confirmed it was he who reassured the spirit and stopped the terrible tornado. The hero nodded, and immediately everyone around them began to discuss it. No one doubted. He undoubtedly has a rank TS. Einstein noted for himself that the spirit seemed not evil at all. The one who communicated with her quickly understood. There was no danger from her. However, everyone around was delighted, because it seemed like a real miracle for them. He did what even the adventurer of the rank of TS would not be able to do. The girl noted that a detective works in the guild, which is able to recognize any lies, so the words of Dominic can be trusted. However, everything that has happened is still surprising. Einstein did not see anything strange. He talked to the spirits for many years and fought with monsters. For him, it was a common part of life. After all, the administrator apologized to them. She did not even know that she had sent them to such a dangerous place. The hero asked not to apologize. Only then they realized how difficult it was. In addition, he made a decision and acted as he wanted, so the guild had not been responsible for it. She smiled even warmer. The words of the hero were really able to reassure her, so she sincerely thanked him from all her heart. Since the reward has been increased, they need to wait a little. It is not yet ready. The hero nodded, but asked what reason the award became larger. The girl explained that this case was special, and even the guidance of the guild so decided. She could not publish any bonuses, so she simply increased the basic award. Aeson surprised this situation, and he decided to clarify the Dominic details, suspecting that he could mix something. Dominic just told everything he saw. Thanks to Aeson, everything was decided very quickly, and although Aeson did it without order, he was assigned a reward. He sincerely thanked the hero. Dominic explained that the base fee is 15,000 gold for 3 people. Usually 10,000 gold is enough to live a whole month. He added that due to overt work, the reward was raised 10 times. If it was all true, then the characters would have to get 150,000 gold. Dominic scratched the nape of the head and sighed. It is still not enough. The administrator is confused, because usually work with such a powerful spirit requires funds at the level of the whole city, or even the country. Einstein reassured everyone, saying that even 10 times the amount is already significant for him, and he would gladly agree to such a proposal. The hero asked Dominic if he was ready to share the reward, but Dominic just smiled and firmly replied that he didn't need anything. Everything should get to the boys. Ains did not understand anything, so Dominic explained. His task was only to bring everyone to the right place. After all, even a normal reward of 5,000 is already a solid amount. If they give up money, he plans to give all the guilds. The hero agreed to one condition. He will definitely treat Dominic or Dish or Sake, otherwise he will be inconvenient. He had groaned, smiled, and admitted that Ains was able to pick up the right words. Then he suggested calling his friend. Ains had nothing against and called all members of the guild together to celebrate their first victory. Everyone rejoiced, laughed, and celebrated until the night. The next day, Eureka came to Sagatel, where the branch of the Southern Magic University is located. She entered the president's office and said she had brought a report from the guild. This time, the report brought Jerica, and Mel sincerely thanked her for helping. Although the girl had already completed her studies and she was no longer a student, she could only meet Mel on the occasion of official affairs. However, Mel said that she would always find a free moment for her. Jerica felt shame because she took someone's time, but in her heart she hoped that she would still be able to accomplish the same task. Mel thought has noted that Jerica is closely linked to both the guild and the university, and this benefits both. She noticed that Jerica was looking at her somehow strange. Then the girl blushed and ashamed, noting that her hair is still as shining as it was ever. She confessed that when she was a student, she really wanted to touch him. Mel smiled back, thanked her, but added that such words were a little untimely. Mel's hair is transmitted to her family from generation to generation, and to touch it is allowed only in very special cases. Jerica realized that this clan has some connection with the spirits. Mel has confirmed that only special people are allowed to touch her hair. It is protected by a magical blessing. If someone is trying to touch it, he immediately discards him back. Jerica realized that almost no one ever touched Mel's hair. She smiled and said that only those who have great magic or the consent of her heart could touch. To reach this level, you need to constantly train your alchemical abilities. Even 100 heroes will not be able to just take up this business. Jerica was well aware of it and promised to do everything possible. Mel carefully watched the reports and suddenly came across something unexpected. One of them stated that the spirit and Myiasis appeared at the same time. The request stated that there were powerful spirits and various monsters. Fortunately, no one was injured. Mel was upset, because if she learned about it before, she could prevent this situation. Eureka agreed. Although the system that has been developed with hundreds of heroes works, they still need a little time to get used to it. Still, life became calmer. The inventions of Mel and heroes really helped people. Jerica thanked them sincerely for it. Mel confessed that most things did when she studied with her master. Jerica reminded her that now Mel should be a mentor for others. Eureka became interested in the master of the president and wanted to get acquainted with him. Mel, in response, confessed that she also wanted to see him again. She delved into the report again. There was something that immediately attracted her attention. The report referred to Manga Ts Rang, who was able to defeat the demonic beast and scare the spirit. But this is strange, because the magicians of this rank usually have no connection with the spirits. Eureka said that today in the guild, everyone discussed rumors about the terrible spirit and a mysterious magician, which appeared somewhere nearby. This meant that the magician got an extraordinary power. The director was convinced that the rank of the magician shows his magical power, not physical strength, and here no talent will help. The girl smiled and thought, if he is really so talented, one should introduce him to other people. It's time for Chuki to visit the city. Mel has raised another urgent report. The number of demons that emerged from Mayas is rapidly increasing. Eureka agreed with sadness. The famine of horned moles is a real trouble. They lack chemical resources, and these creatures are constantly taking food from other monsters. Because of this, the demons will begin to behave even more aggressively, and the chance to accidentally encourage them will increase significantly. The smartest among the monsters will decide to track magicians. Mel noted that now they need to be even more cautious. Despite the difficulties, the city and the school have to get better. Eureka agreed with this and suggested that information exchange is more effective. In a few days, Ains and Rin went out for a walk in the city, and their journey quickly turned into an exciting adventure. The demon attacked them unexpectedly, but they quickly dealt with him. After that, the hero sold magic stones to the company of alchemists. The day really seemed rich in event. In the morning, Rin and Ains sat together on the ground floor of the alchemy garden. Ains thoughtfully said that he had already seen everything that was discussed in the letter, so he offered to leave the city today after lunch. Rin agreed, noting that she really liked it, but added that she was curious about what place would be their next destination. Ison suggested moving south. There are numerous small towns that lead to larger ones, and the paths are quite comfortable. He asked Rin, or maybe she has some special goal. She smiled and agreed to go where the teacher would say. Ains nodded. So we move south. The hero wants to come to university to meet Choki. She may not have free time, but at least finding out how she's business is already nice. Rin said she was often asked why her teacher is so strong and so carefully treating people. It always answers the same way. It is simply such in nature. Ainson just smiled. When the final decision was made, the guy suggested that you come to say goodbye to Jerica. It was necessary to gather, so Ison asked Rena to prepare for meeting with the students. They approached the reception rack in the Garden of Alchemy. The employee immediately realized that they were looking for President Jarek, and politely asked them to wait a little. Ainson suggested pouring tea, and Rin willingly agreed. As soon as they settled, the man approached them and apologized to waiting for them. The hero recognized the man. He was the same secretary who always walked next to Jerica. The secretary explained, President is now at a magical university and will only return tomorrow. The secretary regrets said that if Ison has any things, he can spend them at the university. The hero was happy because they planned to go there. He asked the man to spend them, and he happily agreed. The door was already out, and the carriage stood ready and waited outside. Less than an hour of the road remained to the university. The hero thanked the owners for the warm reception, and the secretary replied with a smile that it was a true honor for the president's friends. While Mel was sitting in her office, she included 3 girls from the student council. They said that all the preparations for the evening course are over, and the magic speaker works great. Mel thanked because everything was completed faster than she hoped. One of the girls shared that for the first time in a long time, the president of the 100 Heroes gave a lecture, and more than 30 students gathered. Eureka noted with a smile that Mel was as popular as when studying at the university. Mel, in response, said she was pleased to see so much energetic and purposeful youth. Someone knocked on the door. This is the next report from the watchtower. The security captain was already in place, and the girl allowed him to come. He said that some strange changes in magical energy were noticed in the south. The devices did not show anything, so he asked Mel to go and check what was going on there. She stopped for a moment near the south window, delving into thought, and then firmly decided to check everything on her own. The man only nodded and went back to his guard. Although the university was protected by a barrier, no suspicious activity was found there. Mel was not too worried about it. She decided to check everything with her own eyes. She lifted her magical spear up, first used a spell to find magical energy, and then used the ability to determine the possible danger. A bright ball of light escaped from the tip, swept through the window and dissolved somewhere far away. Mel turned to Jerica and said that if it was really magic, she would be noticed. Erica looked at Chokoi in surprise. She has never seen such talented magical sensors. In addition, the president had so much power that it could only be envied. Mel smiled. It was this technique that she often used during the battle with God of Evil. For Yuri, her pure and elegant magic seemed like a real miracle. Chuki smiled and noted that even in spite of all praise, this time their plan did not work. At this point, strange traces appeared on the field. No one was visible, but something invisible, transparent, slowly heading to the university. All the same, the magic of Chuki had just an incredible radius of action. Mel acknowledged that in the possession of sensory magic, her mentor was stronger than her. Jerica immediately guessed what the prophet was meant, and it was a lot of surprise. Mel confirmed that her mentor was able to hear the voices of everything that surrounded him, as if he saw everything that was happening around. He was an extremely talented instrumentalist. He was able to talk to the earth and even plants. Belgrind noted that you can only know the spirits of the earth when you are able to see them. Eureka was surprised, because even on a wide field it is impossible to notice low-level spirits. Mel confirmed that weak spirits could not talk. Even among 100 heroes, only a few people could understand what spirits were saying. The prophet could freely deal with them, and this was even more interested in Yurik in this person. Mel looked surprised. Magic was felt, but there was no creature nearby. The energy balls froze in place as if something were restrained. She looked around and asked Yurik if he also felt some strange magical energy. He confirmed that he also noticed it. Shurchite became more louder until a human body began to draw from a pile of leaves. Mel was very surprised when she suddenly met Titan. Yurik could not believe her eyes. There was a demonic beast in front of her, which had an incredible ability to recover and superhuman power. No one could understand how he was here. According to the sensors, its height was more than 4 meters. Mel thought that he apparently hid his true body with magic. The director simply asked not to tell that the guy was able to become invisible. Erica immediately remembered that the same magic had the god of evil. Thanks to her, he could quietly pass through people, and no one noticed him. Mel confirmed the guess. It was a complex magic that can only be recognized by combining sensory and perceptual magic, and no demon is capable of it. Studies show that tyrannical cucumbers usually have only the magic of the earth. However, this ogre learned to become invisible, so it seems that he has acquired new abilities through mutation. Mel said that if the demon absorbs the flesh of the evil god, his body will change under the action of miasma. Some demons even receive divine magic. When her magic discovered this creature, he immediately dropped his invisibility. She realized that he was noticed. The demon turned out to be very reasonable. Bel has been afraid. This titanium ogress is able to capture even more, using the power of the flesh of the evil god. Meanwhile, the OGR raised sharp stone blocks and shot from the crystal gun. Huge pieces of rock stones fell on the building. One of the debris flew out the window where the director and Jerica were, but they managed to jump out of there. A strong explosion came, and the whole building began to crumble into pieces. Eureka coughed with dust and immediately looked at Mel to make sure that everything was fine. The president was also worried about her girlfriend, because they had just jumped from a great height. Mel assured that everything is well with her, only the leg hurts a little. Mel looked at the ruins and noticed that the attack happened suddenly and was very powerful. Fortunately, it was her own laboratory, where almost no one went. The magic barrier warned her in time about a stranger. Inside was only she and Yurik, but the girl still worried whether other buildings had affected. At that moment, the guard ran up to Mel and asked if the president was all right. Mel sought to make sure that everyone had already reported what had happened. The girl said she had already warned all the guards in different sectors. 2 buildings fell completely. Mel heard it with anxiety, because among the destroyed there was a hall near the center. She immediately hurried to check whether everything was well with the students. The guard assured that thanks to the protective spell of the Chuki, all remained intact. Those who did not have time to get out were under the wreckage, but thanks to a protective swing there is enough space left there so that they could survive. They did not crush them. Good news. All the university buildings were strengthened with special protective magic. She absorbed the strokes, Soda's became a shield, and if the building was destroyed, a temporary shelter appeared under the rubble. This was created by the joint efforts of architects and magicians, but Mel was well aware. If nothing is used, everything will be completely bad, and this creature will destroy everyone. The guard immediately realized that he was faced with a titanium ogress, covered with poisonous miamzems. Mel confirmed that this monster has changed. Now he was able to use the magic of evil obtained from the dark deity. It seemed that the monster was very hungry, and the crowd of people became a great opportunity to quench his appetite. She had a magical device in her hands that allowed to communicate around the campus. Teachers were supposed to rescue and evacuate students, and the guards had to distract the plowmen. The president has decided to introduce a state of emergency in the Pioneer. She commanded to contact the strongest adventurers immediately using magical beacons or sheets. The most important thing now is to win time. Mel approached Jerica and offered her assistance with students' evacuation. Jerica thanked her sincere heart. She had alchemical potions but did not dare to leave Mel alone. After all, to win the ordinary Ogetan, usually 10 heroes, and this was even stronger because of his miasm. Erika realized that she was not enough, so she decided to fight with Chuki. However, Chuki told her that the main thing is to take care of her own safety, because that is what her true value is. The director concentrated all efforts on salvation and assured everyone that the beast would not be able to win them so easily. Meanwhile, the knight said that the signal has already been transferred. Eureka clear everything, promised to return as soon as possible after evacuation, and said goodbye. Mel smiled, feeling at the place of the teacher, who proudly shows her example in front of the student. She remembered well that the Ogre Titans are able to recover until their heart is left. The monster was rapidly approaching, getting ready to strike a new blow. There was a deaf sound of steps. The president was approached by a knight. She reported that the security team was already on the spot and was ready to act. To get the advantage, Mel said Titan that they would have to delay and get patience. On the way to the University of Isis and Rin, they saw smoke in the sky. Rin immediately paid attention to it, realizing that it was something serious. Thick smoke rises from the university. The secretary at first could not believe his eyes. Before him, there was a signal spell. He immediately recognized the familiar color. Ision wondered what had happened. In his view, everything looked quite serious. The secretary with anxiety explained that this signal is only given when the guards can no longer cope with the demon. Hearing this, he immediately ordered the carriage to stop. I returned to the heroes and asked them. He had a simple idea: to go back and take care of security. But he understood that these two occupied an important place in the city. Therefore, he asked them to help the university and, if possible, save the president. For the secretary, this place was of particular importance. He was sincerely tilted his head and asked the heroes for help. Seeing this, Ision smiled, because the man was really sincere and frank. The hero looked at the Rin, who smiled and realized she feels the same thing as he. Ison asked the secretary to lift his head, promising to help with Rin. After all, when friends need support, real friends do not remain indifferent. They moved forward. The secretary immediately warned that the road would be uneven, so he apologized for inconvenience. The carriage rolled forward, and the Ison was worried. If they did not have time, everything would be in vain. He looked at the secretary and reported that they would have to move on their own. The hero was convinced that Rin was completely ready, and she confidently confirmed it. Ison offered to get a place on foot, because it will be so faster. Rin addressed the secretary and said that they would leave their things in a carriage. The secretary asked what they planned to do, but in a moment they both quickly jumped out of the carriage. The hero asked the wind to gently land them safely. Thanks to magic, they laid gently to the ground and immediately rushed forward, leaving the carriage behind. Ison smiled at his student, explaining that the wind will help them get to the place even faster. The secretary could not believe it. The guy not only created a passing wind, but also was able to control it and move with his power. They raced their best. Rin saw that the situation was still very tense. Isis realized this too, and pushed others to move even faster. They were not experienced adventure seekers, but still ran faster than the carriage. The secretary could not understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Jerica organized an evacuation. She ordered to bring the wounded to the gate and to inform her of everyone who was still under the rubble. She was in the campus branch in Pioneer City. There she happened to her another student to whom she promised her help. Soon they found another person who needed help. One of the rescuers gave her an accurate list of students in the hall. It has already been saved 37 people. However, 3 more people remained under the ground debris. Eureka realized that the president was fighting, so she decided to climb her wreckage. She called the students, hoping to hear at least someone. However, there was no voice in response. These people may have faint or were so injured that they could not call for help. Even if you use magical detection, it will not produce. Around too many people, and all the signals are mixed. Eureka realized that even among the heroes there was no magician who could easily find anyone who remained under the rubble. She realized that until at least one student stays here, the president will never leave here. The girl with a gloomy look cast her gaze to the side where the battle. She was well aware there is almost no chance against such a monster. Running the debris, she thought, what to do next? She graduated from this university and became the founder of the most successful company in the city. Eureka realized that she was really growing up. Tears ran to her eyes. Everything seemed completely hopeless. If she is unable to save students, then the mentor will not help. Grabbing the fragment, she exclaimed, "Someone, help!" And suddenly, someone's voice sounded in silence. On the ruins there were Ision and Rin. Eureka asked how they got here. Ison smiled. He planned to meet a friend at the university, but it seems that he had other urgent cases. She immediately began to explain what happened. And as soon as she remembered the plowman, Isis said calmly that it was not necessary to worry. He already understood everything, just listening to what was happening around. Eureka could not understand how he understood everything only by hearing. But the guy acted confidently. He promised that he would save everyone as soon as possible. The hero used magic to hear better, and slowly approached the selected place among the debris. "This is exactly the place here," he said. He asked the wind to lift the wreckage. Once they rose, an unconscious guy appeared from them. The student did not answer because he lay unconscious. Ison leaned to him and asked Eureka to help the wounded. The girl thanked him and immediately hurried to help. After that, Ison noticed another student. He realized that the design could fall soon, so he had to be very careful in his actions. The hero carefully lifted the debris, and under them he noticed another wounded girl. Eureka was surprised. 2 people were rescued so quickly. She noticed that there was no spirit nearby, so she thought that the hero did not enjoy their power. She was wondering how he realized where to look. Ision remembered how he heard someone's voices. They whispered quietly that the children are nearby and are waiting for help. It seemed as if the building, built for their protection, handed him this message. The girl could not understand how people were able to hear the voices of ordinary objects. Isis explained that things made with love keep some of the feelings they put in them. He said he learned to feel this special language of emotions. Just saying, the hero heard the voices from his memories. They told him where the last student was hiding. Then he called the wind, and the wreckage rose into the air again. Everyone was surprised to see them fly up. Another student lay directly below them. He almost lost consciousness. Before his eyes, a figure resembled a divine creature appeared. Ision smiled and said, "I am not God. I am only an ordinary person who came to save you." The guy smiled in response and was taken from the trap. Eureka couldn't believe her eyes. It was so simple to determine students that it seemed almost a miracle. She thought that this ability goes far beyond the ordinary communication of spirits. The girl remembered the mysterious linguist, who was told by President Chalk. In her head, suspicions of Ison's true personality began to arise. At this time, Rin said that everyone was already evacuated. Isis thanked and reported that time to move to the next task. Eureka asked what he meant. The guy smiled and said, "Now I just have to meet with my student Chalk." While the other soldiers fought with the monster, teaching all their forces, one fighter was injured. Eureka quickly ran to him and ordered the doctors to urgently assist. Another warrior tried to hit the enemy on his foot, but the ogro effortlessly pushed him back and broke his sword in half. The soldier reported that everyone but the president had already left the battlefield. Only a few units remained in place. Their forces were almost exhausted. Mel realized that no matter how they try, the body of the demon remained unharmed. She guessed, this opponent has the ability to regenerate. A true painstaking enemy. OG Titan raised his hand and released an icy wave that flew directly into the girl. In response, the president involved the magic of the fire spear. Behind her back, a bright sign caught out of which burning spears escaped. There were so many soldiers that they were able to stop all the debris. The OGR was confused. The spears turned out to be much more than he thought, and it was because of this that the defenders were able to repel his attack. Fire spears were hit by a monster, and it immediately began to defend itself to reflect from new attacks. Demon wounds heal immediately. He again raised stone debris. The president pointed out that she only managed to scratch his forehead a little, but even this scratch disappeared quickly. And most importantly, they managed to take time, and all students were safe. The soldier warned that the OGR was going to attack again, although the president already noticed it. The girls were instantly running away and now the rash was left to guess which of them the monster would be aimed at. She drew attention to how the creation cunningly uses the ice flows to get closer to it faster. The monster rushed directly to Mel, but she cleverly evaded and responded with a blow to her fiery spears. Feeling that the opponent was planning something, Mel decided to move away for a safe distance. Unexpectedly, the Zero formed a mace of crystals and struck it with a rapid movement on a girl. The blow turned out to be so strong that Mel almost fell, and her big hat ripped from her head to the floor. Only a magical curtain rescued her. Thanks to her, Mel remained intact, although she kept on her feet with her last forces, preparing for a new attack. The director realized that she would not have time to create a protective shield again, so she would have to take a blow directly into the forehead. The fragments were already racing in its direction. She only prayed for the students to run out of the building. For the first time in life, she realized that she could not even protect herself. It is difficult to be president. But despite everything, she was proud of what she achieved. Suddenly in front of her, a staff fell into the ground. A male voice came, "Protect her!" The staff shone with bright light. Mel closed her face with her hands, but she was protected by a magical field. A man approached her and said, "You can handle it, withstanding everything to the end." The girl raised her head and froze with surprise. The hero carefully put his hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't try to be me. You have already reached everything alone." Mel spoiled her eyes and opened her mouth with surprise. She did not expect to meet her mentor here. Isis smiled and said, "We have not seen each other for a long time." Although the strength of a real battle with the monster was lacking, she still coped perfectly. He reached out to a girl who had not yet believed in her eyes and helped her to rise. She thought it was a dream, but the guy smiled warmly and assured, "No, I'm real." The soldier went closer to check how the president feels. Mel smiled and assured, "It's all right." He soon realized that he was a detachment commander and entrusted her to take care of the wounded. Ring confidently stated that she would support the teacher. Ison asked her to help with the evacuation of people and rescue actions. The girl confidently replied, "Trust it to me." In addition, Jarek's rear is already preparing herbs. They will be able to save everyone together. Ision did not doubt. The girls would cope with the salvation, and his goal is to overcome the enemy. He approached the Titan's plow and said, "Okay, it's time to act." The staff has repeatedly saved him from ice attacks. Isis felt that the enemy was preparing something even more. This creature was clearly intelligent. He even thought of trying to talk to her, apologize for harsh words, and ask. But in response, he heard only a formidable rick. Apparently, the monster did not understand a word. Ison gathered with his forces and stood in a battle, but he understood well what was happening. He quickly took a battle stable and said, "I will show you what is a defeat." The commander tried to stop him. "It's too risky!" But the rash looked at her with surprise. The girl exclaimed, "This is a real magician." And even with staff, going with him is a naked battle is just madness. But the rash just smiled and assured her, "Don't worry, everything will cost." She immediately realized this staff is not simple. At this point, the OGR lifted his huge stick, preparing for a blow. Ison easily hit the sword, and in the other hand was still firmly holding the staff. He said confidently, "You are too slow." He ordered his body to immediately gather all force. In an instant, he struck a monster just into his stomach, and the ore flew back. The commander could not believe her eyes. Such speed was simply incredible, even for an experienced fighter. Mel just smiled and said, "What is strange here?" "This is the prophet." She confirmed that this man was really their teacher. They studied magic and even hand-to-hand combat. He is stronger than any of the characters. Ison waved his sword and struck the enemy with a huge hand. The OGR did not give up. He swung with the other hand and released a powerful wave of ice. The hero used the technique of storm cutting, and all the debris immediately crumbled into tiny particles. Ison fled lightly and struck another hand. The hero realized that he was still not over. He forced himself to move even faster, and the puzzled ogress barely had time to follow him. The angry beast hurried to bounce back, hoping to have time to restore strength. But Isis noted that due to constant blows, regeneration is no longer coping, and can no longer completely heal the body. He quickly became close and immediately struck. Although the monster's hand grew up in just a few seconds, Ision was already alert. He understood. The main thing is to strike. Ogre again formed a mace made of crystal in his hand. Isis grabbed the sword with both hands, gathered all his strength, and ordered the blade to strike once after. He was completely focused on the weak place of the opponent, and that was where his attack. The hero gathered magical energy, created a powerful wave, and used a technique called the Cord of Faith. He waved his hand with a wave of the enemy's mace into small pieces. A powerful wave of magic cut the body of a terrible titanium before he had time to understand something. The girls froze, holding their breath. The body of the monster was divided into two parts and heavily heated to the ground with a deaf roar. Ison hid the sword in the vagina, and Mel approached him. That's what she expected from her teacher. Everyone around could not believe that the hero just overcame Titan. However, Isis recognized her merit. It was through Mel that he managed to win precious minutes to save students. Mel blushed and shyly said that he praises her too much. However, Isis disagreed, because she has already completed her task. She managed to protect the students. Mel recalled that her teacher always remained the same. He always encouraged her when she made an effort. That is why all the students loved him and tried to be closer to him. She remembered how they trained together and realized, so it was always. Mel lowered her head with shame, because at heart she dreamed so that the teacher again paid attention to her and praised. Ison has almost forgotten about it, but remembered the hint and reached out to the rags. He gently spent his hand on her hair. Just as she dreamed, Mel leaned closer and put her head on the teacher's shoulder. I wanted that. Soldiers standing nearby were surprised. They could not believe that someone dared to touch the hair of the president. She put her hand on her shoulder and thanked him. It became much easier for her. The hero was happy because it looked that she no longer needed medical help. After first aid, she felt quite well. Still, she had something she wanted to talk about. Although many thoughts were swinging in her head, she focused and decided to say the most important. Mel warmly greeted the teacher when he finally returned home. All this time, they worked together to restore the world, waiting for his return. Ison smiled and said, I'm home. Now thanks to you, I can enjoy this beautiful world again. The next day, a real revival prevailed in the global guild, as if in a hive. The guild tavern had a holiday to celebrate the victory over the demon. The administrator explained that the university and the pioneer city were in danger, so the heroes who helped save them deserved the reward. Many valuable materials have been collected from the body of Titan Ogre. The proceeds of the university used to rebuild after the destruction. In their honor, they arranged a large feast to thank the guards for bravery and risk for the sake of others. In the city, the holiday raged several days. And when the fun subsided, Rin was gathered with Rin and went south at dawn. Mel was upset because they are already going, and she could not thank the Ison for everything. The hero just smiled back. He was already quite good to fill his magic bag with useful things. The president was upset that they had to go so early. She would also like to talk to the teacher and Rin-chan, because they were so interesting and fun with them. Rin thanked Mel for the good conversation which brought them both joy. Mel already knew what is Ison now. She confessed that she was amazed. The teacher has not changed since their last meeting, but even looked younger. The hero replied that he was due to the Emperor of the Spirits, who had made him. Once upon a time, Ison portraits depicted him an elderly man. So few could remember what he really looked like. And after the war, many people took his name. Mel thought that if he was accepted as a prophet, he would be met in any city with joy. But now, because of the changed appearance, it may not be recognized. But the hero did not worry about it. He just wanted to look at the world created by his students. The president was delighted and sincerely hoped that all this was true. Ison assured her that she was also one of his best students. He was genuinely glad that after returning from the world of spirits, his first step was this meeting. After his words, Mel seemed to blossom from happiness. She still wanted to thank him somehow, so she gave a small souvenir. It was a special certificate from the president of the University of Magic, which could come in handy. His status of the hero adventurist opened the door to many southern cities and allowed him to visit the same places where she had access and Mel. At first, Ishan could not believe that this document was so powerful, but she confidently assured him of it. The president hesitated a little, whether she should get up for the teacher, because he is much stronger than her. However, she still rejoiced that she could at least help him. She asked where they planned to go on. The hero replied that they were heading south to a large trading city where another student lives. Mel has warned it is worth finding out that the teacher is going. The fuss will start immediately, so it is better to remain silent and tell nothing in advance. Ision nodded to consent. He did not want to quarrel with anyone. Mel promised to help you go unnoticed. She assured that the university would retain its secret. Moreover, Mel planned to joke over the joke king. Jerica joined the company. During the victory celebration, she learned about their future journey and handed over the letter of the letter. Only a representative of the company Cathod was familiar to her. Thanks to a special magic seal, he immediately recognizes that it was she who wrote this letter. In her letter, she told who was Ison and asked not to raise unnecessary noise. Ison thanked her. Jerica always treated him with good. Mel shook her hand firmly and gave her care for the teacher. Rin assured that she could be fully relied on. Jerica and Mel waved them goodbye and wished a happy road. Rin also thanked everyone for their care and said goodbye. Ison and Rin left behind the pioneer city of Sagadal and went south, towards new adventures and meetings with future students. Half a day of travel flew unnoticed. Ison was surprised how time it was, because it was so good that it was impossible to look. Rin agreed with him. She also did not feel fatigue. They came to a small town where there were several tractors and shops. The hero remembered his student, who at one time said that comfortable roads were of great importance. In fact, the guy made a lot of effort to do everything right. The sun was still shining in the sky, so Ison decided that it was possible to continue the way. He told Rin that there was a shopping city nearby and began to think how to get there. Rin believed that you could only walk there. There was no other way. But the hero suddenly remembered that one of his students once wrote to him. He began to trade carts and opened his stores in several cities where the postal road passes. A few years ago, this guy opened his business. His company even leased carts. There may be their branch in this town. Eureka said that in the cities near the post stations were specially opened points where you could rent. It was very convenient for trade. Even experienced travelers or adventurers could rent transport. Ison asked Rina whether she was tired and suggested taking a cart, if necessary. But the girl thanked him and answered with a smile that she wanted to go with the mentor. She clenched his fist, proving that her fatigue was no longer terrible. Thanks to his workout, a simple walk no longer knocks it out. Rina was convinced that walking together much more fun. The hero laughed and agreed with her. The only thing he really wanted was to see a branch that his student opened. Rina gladly agreed to make him a company in this walk. They reached a small village and went to a workshop where you could rent a cart. The door was a little open, and because of them, a man who spoke welcome. Ison looked at a board where contracts were usually available. But this time all carts were already booked. The seller apologized to him, but the hero was not disappointed. He just wanted to look at the store. They decided to get to the trading city on foot. It was very surprised by the seller. He warned that on foot the road would take all day and advised to get a tent. But the traveler already had his own. The seller confessed that now you will hardly meet travelers who do not belong to any organization, especially such young people. He considers them real desperate. Ision smiled and thanked. He was wondering if everything really was so good, because the student's letter said that clients were missing. The seller explained that their store is near the growing city. Because of this, people who order goods in advance have increased recently. The hero guessed that demand was increasing where cities grow. Rina advised to visit neighboring cities to see for himself. Isis thanked for the useful information, said goodbye, and wished the happy road. When the hero came out of the building, he wondered what Rini. A pleasant atmosphere prevailed around, and his student was already able to gather a real friendly community around him. Rina agreed. The student has mastered how important it is to maintain a good relationship with clients, and all this is due to Ison's advice. But the hero did not agree. He believed that it was not his merit, but the natural talent of his students. He was happy about and proud of them. They went to the cafe to rest a little. Rina was happy. For her, a joint break with the teacher was a real joy. We decided to order an omelet, because eggs are really delicious here, and cozy coffee shops in the region are enough. Isis planned to arrive in the trading city by the evening. If they can find a job on the road, then they will have time to get there on time. He enjoyed walking under the starry night sky, but decided that it was better to get to the place before dark. Rina immediately agreed with that. After resting, they went back in the way, and soon noticed on the sidelines stopped the cart. The man diligently lifted a unicorn, whose horn was flashing on his forehead. But the animal remained lying and did not want to get up. Ison, along with Rina, came closer to find out what happened. The guy in the glasses apologized to them for accidentally blocking the road. The hero did not blame him. He just asked if the cart broke. It was really dangerous here. The guy replied, the unicorn did not want to go on. The merchant could not leave his goods, so he asked his partner to go for help. However, he realized that it would take a whole day. But if you leave the visa without care, it could also be dangerous. Ision looked at the unicorn. It was a calm and charming creature that significantly exceeded ordinary horses in strength and endurance. It was visible that the animal was very bad. The merchant suspected herbs poisoning, so he gave antidote, but the animal was no better. The guy thought for a moment, but still decided to ask for permission to look at the unicorn. Ison dropped sideways, easily touched the nose of the animal, and quietly asked for her permission to talk. He heard the voice of a unicorn. The right foot of the animal seemed to be silent. The unicorn wanted to help his master very much, but because of the pain could not do it. The merchant watched in surprise how the guy solved everything. Ison calmly approached the paw of the animal, carefully pulled out a small needle that was stuck firmly under the skin. As he pulled the arrow, the unicorn shook and immediately went up to his feet. Ison reached out the needle. It was a hedgehog needle filled with poison. Even if it is removed from the body, it still injects the poison. Now that it was taken, it was possible to give an antidote. The merchant thanked and assured that everything was fine. They were not far from the city, but did not see the hedgehogs. It may have been a trap, because the poison was very strong. Ison threw a pin. Merchants are often victims of attacks of bandits or enemies. But this time, no one could understand who exactly wished them. The merchant poured medicine into a bowl and gave it a unicorn. Soon he had to become healthy again. He thanked again. Isis seems to be well known about the magic of words, and it surprised the seller. The merchant mentioned that his acquaintances also sometimes use such magic. The magic of spirit and prophecy is very similar, but the magic of the spirit sounds much stronger. It was the first time he saw this thing using it. For Ison, everything seemed quite familiar. Usually magicians use element magic to control creatures, but they are almost unable to talk to them. What you did now is a real miracle. Ison smiled and replied that he traveled a lot, so he met different creatures on his way. In the war, he often had to deal with those who could not speak because of heavy wounds. This is what helped him develop his skills. The unicorn touched his hair gently. He was glad and in a great mood went on. The merchant smiled sincerely, rejoicing that his animal was recently sick and now feels great. Now that everything is in place, it's time to go on the road. But first you need to look at the cart. Maybe without the help of the master. Ison put his hand on a visa and asked what had happened. He tried to hear his voice. I leaned to the axis of the wheel. Something turned out there. Before it lay a piece of metal covered with a thin film of some liquid. Rena immediately guessed that it could be a magical potion. Isis confirmed that it was a potion that limited movement. Someone seems to be intentionally adjusting this trap. The cart finally moved from the place. The seller was happy and thanked everyone again. He realized that travelers are well versed in technology, because in order to work with the magic of words and objects, you need to really understand how they are arranged. It is said that the things they care about with their own soul. Ison just heard this soul. The merchant was confused apparently only because he was very cherished by his cart. Ison saw that everything had gone into place and wished them a happy journey. The merchant realized that the characters were heading to the trading city. The road was far and difficult. As they had already helped him, he decided to take travelers with him, because he was going there. Ison wondered if he would not be superfluous. But the merchant just smiled. For him, it was a little fee for the help he received. Such an opportunity rarely happens. Ison looked at Rena, who answered him with a warm smile, and added that it all depends on the choice of mentor. Then the hero agreed to the proposal and introduced himself with his girlfriend. The merchant was a little discorded. He was called Robor. He arrived from one of the shopping cities. Then he suggested convenient to settle in his van. They passed the long road without difficulty, although the cart was loaded under the tie. Roy explained that this is a special cart of their company, a true example of speed and reliability. He was genuinely glad that the characters helped repair the breakdown. If not for their help, I would have to rent in the nearest town, and the cargo could not be left unattended. Isis thought that he had done right, left, because all carts in the city were already busy. He smiled and said that he was lucky to meet such wonderful people. The hero in response noted that he helped sincerely and happy that it was useful. Particularly lucky was a unicorn, and he was surprised why he had such luck. In the most difficult minute, it was nearby and tried to encourage him. The animal felt well. Because of this, the merchant felt confused. Rossi said that this unicorn was near him from the very beginning of his studies, and they were always together. Isun recalled how a unicorn reacted with confidence to his words. There is really a special connection between them. He agreed, because for him it is not just an animal but a true friend. The unicorn was satisfied, and he thanked him for the conversation. It was still not close to the city, but with such friends, he felt calmly. Isun smiled and assured, if you need help, let him go without hesitation. Due to the delay, the road was almost deserted. If they continue to move in the same way, they will have time to get to the dark. Meanwhile, the sun was starting to sit behind the horizon. Suddenly a cross cart appeared before them, which apparently crashed into a tree. No one was visible around. Aro noticed that if you slow down and carefully go away from the edge, it is quite possible to go through this area. But as soon as they came closer, a man in a mask suddenly jumped out of the cart. He jumped on their cart and hit the roof with a knife. I immediately understood the enemy, so he did not think and forced the horse to run even faster. The cart lunged sharply forward and quickly moved on. The bandit did not have time to grasp. He just smiled sinisterly. He was waiting for such a reaction from the merchant with the emblem of their company. He realized that he himself could not cope. It was necessary to escape. However, suddenly the unicorn fell to the ground again. Aro noticed in his hands a poisonous needle already familiar. This time the poison was so strong that even the antidote would not be able to save so quickly. The hero was certain it was the work of the same criminal. When everything was prepared, the bandit called his gang. The horse stopped. The idea succeeded. The leader threw the last poison needles and gave a sign to move forward. One of the tail holes on his head happily stated that today they got a good trophy again. The other agreed, adding that the use of poison was a great idea. The third person, with a lobby bandage, said he knew about gemstones in RO. He began to threaten and demanded to give him everything, both goods and horse, and even life. The merchant realized that he would not work. Earlier, he had destroyed their ideas. So now it is not necessary to wait for the enemies of mercy. One of the bandits threw it into road. He only had to understand that he would not be able to dodge on time. At the same moment, Isis quietly said the spell, calling the wind for help to protect the merchant. Suddenly, a wall of the wind, which stopped the enemy weapon, grew in front of the row. The bandits have not yet understood what happened, and the hero only noticed that there was more and more tension around. He lifted the staff towards the attackers and, smiling, addressed the row. These negotiations did not decide anything. Then they will cope with themselves. One of the bandits snatched the sword and asked who before him. When he noticed the staff in the hands of a stranger, he decided that it was probably hired on the road by a van. Rina stared at the enemies and asked the teacher what to do next. One of the robbers was enthusiastically looked at the Elfian. He immediately thought that such a beauty would have a high price in the black market. The hero realized that these criminals were still engaged in slave trade. Isis raised his hand and asked them only one thing. The bandit grunted and said that the magician would only spare if he seems and allow them to have fun. Isis smiled calmly and suggested that the bandit seemed to surrender to the city guard. Silence fell. The leader with a curve spilled on the ground. He said it would be his wonderful last words. The bandits laughed in a grip. For them, this hero seemed just a funny boy. One of the leaders boldly announced that the conversation was over. In gratitude for a good mood, he promised to give him a quick death. Isun realized that further conversations did not make sense. Now all you have to do is act. It seemed to the bandits that they met a simple target. The guy would not have time to blink, as he was defeated, and would not have time to use witchcraft. They sent their swords on him and began to laugh mockingly. But the hero just waved a staff, and several attackers immediately found themselves on the ground. One of them fell straight to his feet, and the rest froze. It seemed to them that he did not use magic at all. It moved so quickly that it was difficult for the eyes to be traced. But in fact, Isun turned on the magic of acceleration. He lightly appeared near each enemy and quickly disarmed them in turn. The bandits could not understand how it turned out. Their leader was angry and commanded not to panic, but to act. One of the guys suggested changing the plan and grabbing a girl. Rina listened carefully to everything around. When one of them came closer, she kept calm, carefully pulled the dagger and prepared to act. She jumped sideways and instantly stuck the blade in his leg. The enemy shouted at pain, not understanding what was happening. And Rina has already used her electric blade, and the powerful discharge of the current passed through his body. When the bandit fell to the ground, the girl looked around quickly and turned to the teacher. Everything was over. The hero just smiled. He also coped with his task. Only he remained, the one who threatened to kill him. He could not believe that he had lost and demanded to say who they were. The hero entered confidently while remaining calm and said, "We are just ordinary travelers." Saying it, he hit him with a staff right in his face. He immediately fell to the ground, and Ision announced that the robbery failed. Now they are caught by guard. After the battle, the heroes tied the bandits and put them in the van. Ra, a little ashamed, thanked again for the salvation. The hero asked not to worry. Aro already began to guess that Isis and Rina were not ordinary adventurers, although it was difficult to believe in it. The strength of these people was obvious. Isis strengthened the ropes with magic so that criminals could not escape and decide to pass them on. He agreed. The horse became better, so they could go on. He asked permission to thank properly when the cities were reached. The hero supported it and noted that it is already darkened outside, so it is worth being alert. When the sun was almost hiding behind the horizon, their van pulled up to the big trading city of Oli. When the guards noticed the criminals, they immediately recognized the same gang that recently caused horror to the whole city. They were especially given the poison that these villains were usually used. Rina, along with Ison, received a reward, and the girl did not hide her admiration. The hero even forgot that they pay money for helping protection. The merchant said that the city mayor and his assistant decided. They are supported here with the help of cash. Rina advised to spend the night at the hotel, and Ison just smiled, saying that extra money would always be agreed. The man approached them and was surprised, seeing Ro in the city. He noted that he had not even had time to call the masters for repair. David greeted and confirmed that he was really helped. David already knew from the guards. The van was repaired, and the attackers were caught. David, having corrected the glasses, looked at the young heroes enthusiastically and said, "These guys were truly impressive." He bowed to them and thanked them heartily for saving his friend and horse. David named his name and assured that he would do everything he was able to thank. Ison said he would do the same in his place. However, David insisted that he must pay off his debt. He agreed, otherwise he will not be able to consider himself a true merchant. After learning that the characters were going to stay here longer, he asked if they had already decided where they would spend the night. David said he had already booked for them on the main street, and even paid everything. David praised for the fact that he took the initiative in time. Ison thanked and pleased with pleasure to the invitation. You will not often meet such a home. David was very pleased that everything went exactly as he hoped. Rost was also happy, but David decided that this was not enough to thank for his life. So he asked a little more time to make more good. Among other things, he suggested treating them at his own expense. Ision looked at Rina, waiting for her reaction. She said that this restaurant was a great place. David took care of everything in advance and was already booking a table. Friends have fun talking to the road. Ison decided to leave his belongings and stroll the city, and Ropes willingly agreed to accompany them. Going to the apartments, Aro said that everyone would feel here as if at home. They agreed that they would meet 2 hours at the entrance, because the restaurant was quite close. Rina was lightened by happiness. There was a spacious room where several beds were standing, and there was her own bathroom. The hero suggested leaving things and walking around the streets nearby. They went for an evening walk in the city, which remained lively and after sunset. Izon smiled. The city was bright and lively, even at night. Rina saw something unusual and asked to look with her. She pointed to the counter with juices. Fruits from all over the corners were taken to the city, so there was an unusual mix here. The hero was happy, and also decided to try the juice. Isis noticed the old observation tower, which could now be visited, and suggested climbing there together. Rina gladly agreed to this idea. On the top in front of them is the night landscape of the city. The hero was surprised. The city looked much larger than he remembered. At this point, Rina finally realized why the teacher looked so surprised at the map earlier. Then he suggested going down and walking together with unknown quarters of the city. Roy explained that the walls are mainly houses and commercial areas. Everything is conveniently and thought out there. They came to the empty area that looked as if construction had not yet begun. There was a sign on the green grass. The plate testified, "Careful. It is planned to be construction. The territory belongs to the city administration." The city was growing and expanding. Isis, with delight, watched how the world was changing in the eyes. Through the letters of students, it was perceived quite differently. The teacher noticed that he had shown his staff, and then Rina asked what it could mean. He explained that he had once left a part of his magic, and this is why the staff reacts. They crossed the lawn and headed to the forest. The staff in his hands glowed even more, so it seemed that the source of magic was already nearby. The magic remained in the tree. Ision broke the seal, and from the bright light the energy of Ali, which transfused into his book, escaped. The hero has received a skill that enhances his magical power to the 2nd level. He already forgot that he had left her here before. Earlier, he always searched for quiet and deserted corners to hide his magic from other people's eyes. I could not even imagine that Alagain would become so great. However, he was genuinely glad, seeing how the students succeed. And once he accidentally found a magic fragment. Rena jokingly suggested that the teacher apparently knew everything in advance. However, Isis just smiled and replied that it was just a pleasant accident. The hero suggested to return home and Rena agreed, noting that the time was really. She remembered how R.O. was told about a restaurant called the White Cat's House. It was a delight. David treated them generously. Food and drinks were as much as he paid for himself. For guests, he ordered the most delicious dishes from the most famous restaurant of the city. Ison expressed gratitude, and Rena gladly said it was very good. In addition to the treats, live performances were often arranged here. Songs were sang, danced, or showed acrobatic numbers. There was nothing to pay for it. Roy explained that they booked a special table, where the scene and the artists themselves were visible. They can even ask to play a favorite tune. Isis felt that a special atmosphere was dominating here. Today, a real craftsman who was known on theatrical art and playing on various instruments performed on stage. The sounds of the violin announced the beginning of the speech. The musician has not yet appeared on the stage, but Aiden was already fascinated by her game. The hero tasted the dish and immediately felt how delicious she was. Rena also tried. She was struck by the bright aroma of spices, and she became interested in cooking this food. David wondered if Rena liked to cook. She answered with a smile that she liked to cook for the teacher, and I was immediately supported her. David was happy, because in this city cooks have always been famous for their skill. He wished them delicious, and stressed that the company wanted to thank them for their support. Isona surprised the strange name of the company, so he decided to find out where she came from. Rost recalled that they and David had not yet opened the truth. They are the founders of the city. Mag, David, and the R.O. merchant once founded this place together. It's been a long time since the moment. Now the company has collected many specialists under its roof and offers services from business advice to work in the forge. Earlier, everyone thought they were just colleagues, but the hero did not suspect that they were in fact the founders. Ra confirmed that although everyone had their own profession, it did not interfere with them. After learning the whole truth, David felt even more desire to thank for her support. They all sincerely expressed their gratitude for their kindness. It turned out that Aidan was already aware of this company because his acquaintance Jericho works there. Friends were surprised by the names. Ross asked, "The same thing that controls the alchemical garden?" Ison received a letter with the seal of this manager. Rowe assured that Jericho was their girlfriend who did a lot for the company. David immediately recognized the magical seal that only she uses. He said not to think that they were suspected. They just wanted to make sure everything. Reading the letter, Roz and David smiled at first, but then their faces changed with surprise. They lifted their views on Ison. Ross, wiping his sweat from his forehead, asked in surprise, "Did the prophet Ison, known as the master of 100 heroes?" The guy confirmed a nod. He did not even imagine that his secret would be revealed so quickly. The boys could not believe the eyes. There was a living legend. David said that even the songs were about this person. And he confessed that he always thought that the prophet was a gray-grandfather on which the magic, which hid his true age. Izon really lived for many years in a place where time has stopped. He began to think, when his name became known as a legend. Ross corrected the glasses and said, "You are really quite famous. I don't know all the details, but I have heard about you more than once." David was convinced that these stories were not fictional. Even Jericho would not come up with something like that. But who would believe that a famous sage walks between them, hiding like a real spy? The boys stopped for a moment, hesitating. Then R.O. turned to David, trying to clarify whether it was possible. He just smiled. Apparently he had similar thoughts. Turo did not understand what it was about, so he explained. The artist they were talking about is too well known to appear in such a distant place. However, she was the girl among hundreds of heroes. The hero looked at the stage with surprise, where the scenes just started to move. In the chest of the girl again the feelings were moved. She was enveloped by nostalgia. She tightly squeezed the violin in her hands and quickly moved on. Suddenly she fell off the stage and hurried to the boy. She immediately realized that it was he. Her hero returned. She hugged her beloved teacher firmly as soon as she rushed to meet him. The young man smiled, because this tune seemed to him such a friend that the wind himself was singing in the field. The girl said it was quite normal, because among the audience was her teacher. Root froze. One of the heroines came to them quite calmly, as if for her it was a habitual work. It is good that their table was in a separate closed area, so the strange scene did not attract strange views. Phil held firmly for the teacher. She missed him very much. No one could imagine that Filela was a world-name musician. For the hero, she has always been a modest and calm girl. At this point, leaning against him and inhaling the warmth of his heart, Phil felt true tenderness. David mentioned that during the speeches she seemed much more modest. He smiled because their thoughts coincided with David. Finally, Phil noticed them and apologized, because the teacher could not afford to behave remotely. He apologized if her emotionality could scare them. However, it is always open and real. That is its nature. The girl was glad and exclaimed that he remembered her name. Eisen just lifted his eyebrows. Can you forget your own student? She hugged him again and said that this moment was among her 5 happiest. But the best for her are the days when he spoke to her pleasant words and praised her. Rina hesitated a little, but still gained courage and turned to the teacher. What is the name of this girl who reacts so enthusiastically? The hero introduced Rini to Philo, his student who always sought to delight people and give them smiles. Fila looked at Rina and realized that this girl also feels sympathy for the teacher. Apparently she is also his student. Rina nodded and said that she was the latest among the students, because she recently joined him. Fila recalled that Rina was sometimes answering letters instead of a teacher. Some letters even mentioned the name of Rina, and she confirmed it. Fila gladly stated that Rina has now become her younger sister. Phil confessed that Rina was looking very cute, and it turned out that both of them were in love with one person. From this they seemed to become girlfriends, so Fila immediately suggested be friends. Rina gladly agreed. Raudold explained that he specifically booked a separate room where you can talk more quietly. He suggested that everyone go there. The hero agreed, and the whole company followed him. He apologized that the room did not look very cozy, but the hero assured him that it didn't matter. On the contrary, he sincerely thanked for the attention and care he was given. Fila had once read a piece of letter that said the Ison should be secret because it could be dangerous. So she decided to behave more carefully and not attract unnecessary attention. But she still noticed that the teacher became the same as before. The hero confirmed this. He fully recovered and now travels the world to meet his students and learn more about different places. Phil was extremely impressed and said at once that it was a real accident, because she also traveled and visits different cities. The girl appealed to the teacher to allow her to accompany him on a journey. Izan recalled how once in the north she gathered around her talented actors and created her own theatrical troupe. Then she left the city, leaving a letter where she dreamed of standing to people around the world. It seems that the girl did not stop there and traveled further. The hero was grateful that he kept her letter and remembered this message. He said he easily remembers such bright letters. Hearing this, the girl smiled and honestly confessed that she really wanted to stay in his memory. If they did not stop in Sagittal, then their path lay south. It was at that moment that Phil was going there. She knew well where several students were, and would be glad to help if she was invited with her. The hero did not argue and turned to Rina for advice. She just smiled, making it clear that she would agree with any choice. The guy thought that the Phillies probably had their reasons for this trip. If its goals do not interfere with their plans, they will be happy to agree with them. Fila assured that everything is not true. Next to the teacher she feels a real inspiration, which is the most important thing for the artist. That is why she so much wanted to go with the teacher and Rina. Izan looked at Rina, and she nodded in response. The guy nodded to the agreement. So soon they will go on the road. Phil could not restrain her joy. She sincerely thanked the teacher for the decision made and promised to do everything possible. Ra saw that the conversation had come to an end and suggested that everyone return to dinner. Eisen agreed with him, because a good opportunity to celebrate a meeting with an old girlfriend and raise a glass for their reunion. Phil warmly hugged Rina and suggested going to go to bed together. She really wanted to talk to her quietly about the teacher, and Rina was not mind. The hero pleased it. He liked that the girls got well. David recalled our hero for a moment. In all this bustle, he forgot to say something important. He asked to join their journey because he learned about another hero who is now in a trading city. The hero guessed that it was about Meisha. Izan did not suspect that Flawed would meet here. Actually, he came to talk to the mayor. But David immediately explained to him, the mayor is usually very busy and almost does not appear in the city. He would like to take part in the investigation, find out where the hero is, and report it. If there is such an opportunity, Izon could visit the company office tomorrow. The hero thanked David for his help and promised that he would definitely come. David wished everyone a good night and said goodbye. R.O., along with David, returned to the head office of the company, Doors to the Magic of Words. They climbed the elevator on the 4th floor and went to the cabinet of the warden. Rot was comfortable in the chair. He sighed heavily, thinking about how tense this day turned out to be. He removed the glasses and nodded in agreement. The van really broke, the bandits were attacked, but in the end, it ended well. He could not even imagine that he would ever personally meet the prophet Izon, a hero he heard in his childhood. David just nodded, remembering how they had already become friends, not even knowing who this man really was. Another hero was the co-founder of The Magic of Words. They quickly understood what they really were without any formalities. It convinced everyone that the Izon is a truly reliable man, and for the merchant it is of great importance. David decided that he would respond in the same way, and suggested that you start collecting information immediately. He also noted that the reception room of the city council should work at night. Although their question is not urgent, but as representatives of a large company, they are more likely to listen to them. Rost opened the door to go to the management department, but David stopped him. The deputy mayor wanted to entrust them with a new case. It could be risky, but they decided to try. Rosta agreed. This is a great opportunity to start search. A hearty dinner gave them energy, and the boys were ready to work until the morning. The next morning, the main character came to the central office of the company, Doors to the Magic of Words. He looked at the space of the building and quietly said, "I'm in place." Although it was very early, there were already a lot of people gathering here. So the rumors of the company's success have been confirmed. Izon recalled that he needed to approach the reception. The guy greeted the girl on a good morning and politely asked if she could ask her question. In response, she asked what he came with. Izon introduced himself and reported that he had agreed to meet with R.O. and David. The girl asked if the director was meant. The guy confirmed it, noting that he received his personal invitation. She apologized for the confusion. She did not have time to say how suddenly he heard. The male voice called Izon. David himself came to meet Izon, guessing that he had already arrived. The girl was surprised to see that David knew Izon and apologized that she met him so restrained. David reassured that he should not worry. He did not warn the workers in advance. However, the Izon is guilty of him, and next time David is met with respect. Everyone in the office was immediately alert. Who is this visitor if the director himself came out to meet him? And they went to the meeting room together. The workers of the Whisper discussed, who can this person be if the chief calls him a debtor? The girl in the reception thought, because she was sure she knew almost all important guests. But now she was curious about who this Mr. Izon really was. When David rose the stairs, he apologized for not telling the employees about the true status of Izon. But the hero just smiled and reassured everyone, they say, all right. He stressed that caution is always good. David in response joked that he came without girls. It turned out that they chatted all night and now sleep firmly. They rose to the 3rd floor, where there was the main hall for the meetings. David warned that besides R.O., there will be another man who knows something about the mayor. The hero did not mind. The man opened the door and invited Izon to the apartment. Inside, a solid man with a mustache, who greeted and said that he was Woods, the deputy mayor of a shopping city, stood near him. He gladly gave the Izon's hand and warmly expressed his respect for him. The Izon politely answered and thanked for the time. David noted that Woods is a person who can be trusted. He already told him everything, and he insisted on talking in person. The city developed through the energy of the mayor, and was already heard about Izon. For David it was a great honor. Woods said that if the mayor knew about this visit, he would have postponed all his affairs for them. He thanked the fact that the hero came quietly, without superfluous, and mentioned that the mayor always celebrated Izon's concern for others. The Izon was slightly shot and scared, because he really believed that it would be the best for everyone. The mayor was not in the city now. He went to the neighboring city and will be able to return only a week or two. Now they have someone who immediately reports as soon as he returns, so the meeting can be organized without delay. Izon expressed gratitude to David, Rost, and Mr. Woods for their support. The Woods just waved it up, asked not to thank, and asked if the Izon knew what would do next after this conversation. He replied that nothing special is happening. Woods appealed to him, hoping for his skill. It was discussed how the gift of prediction could be obtained from the offender without resorting to any cruelty. Izon asked if Mr. Woods was really aware of what he was capable of. Woods confidently replied that he understood everything, because he is not just a civil servant. He recalled that in trading cities there are special farms where safe demonic animals are grown. The hero recalled that there have long been the Ukrotibbles who signed agreements with demonic creatures. Once upon a time he was fond of this, although this direction is not too developed. Suddenly, one of the farms received an alarming message. The animals escaped from under control, and the protective barriers stopped acting. The hero realized that Woods asks him to restrain his creatures, but not harm them. He was right. These animals are extremely valuable, so they cannot be killed. Usually, David himself dealt with similar tasks, but this time, the team lacked the necessary specialists. The hero thought that Rena and Phil could join him. David was happy. Their abilities would be enough for hundreds of other people. In such a situation, the Ison agreed to help because he still has to be a little more. They exchanged with hands. The hero thanked, and Woods noted that his help is really very important. He promised a decent reward. When they finally agreed, the hero suggested not to delay and start the work immediately. Woods promised to pass the card, and they would find all the details on the spot. Izon wondered if he could take his students first. David said that everything is ready. The girls are already waiting in the waiting room. David opened the door and suggested to hold them. When they came out, Rasta noted Woods that Izon easily agreed to a sudden request. Woods confirmed this. He himself was surprised. He did not expect such sincerity. To see the prophet in reality was a real event, and still get such words from him. Among the 100 heroes, as well as among the townspeople, there were many good people. Rost believed it was the merit of Izon. The mayor was determined, and it was he who created such a friendly atmosphere in the city. He may have taken this rice from the prophet. Rao invited Woods to take a place and brewed tea for him. He realized that there were some more things to visit, and he was not mistaken. Woods asked on behalf of the intermediary company. Such organizations cooperate with the city, and even for simple work they are well paid. Their firm is part of those who are trusted in the first place. However, this time the task was really difficult. It was a task that had an increased danger. At the very edge of the city stood a luxurious estate where a famous scientist settled. More recently, strange and incomprehensible things began to happen in this place. Since the beginning of the year, he has not talked to anyone and sat alone all the time. Only occasionally came to him to bring food. Roz thought that perhaps the scientist was too fond of his research. This is probably the reason for the problems. Subsequently, the scientist began to approach visitors and offer to learn more about the power of the Dark God. Rost agreed, realizing that nothing good would come of it. During the war, many people dreamed of getting the power of the Dark God. Even now, there are secret orders looking for this power. When the alarming news came, the city immediately wanted to send soldiers. But after talking to frightened residents, it became clear that the open investigation was only scared of those who are relevant to the order. Therefore, Woods appealed to the RO to conduct a secret investigation, pretending to be couriers with a provision. Their task was to penetrate the estates and find out the information they need. But this needed a magician with a unique talent, one who could distinguish things filled with dark energy. There was only one gift, a resident of the ruins. It was about magical vision, a special ability given to the pink pupil. Thanks to this ability, the hero could see the energy of different colors. Thanks to this ability, he could recognize evil in various objects. It was very useful not only for trade, but also in many other situations. Even with this task, RO had to make a lot of efforts. If there was almost no dark energy nearby, it was very difficult to find it. In addition, after the attack of the bandits, he has not yet completely recovered. Still, RO wanted to help. Woods accepted his proposal. He recalled that RO was already dealing with similar situations. Therefore, in addition to normal payment, he was promised a supplement for danger. He just nodded. The risk for him is not news. He accepted the proposal, because it is impossible to pull with the Dark God. On Rena and Phil Street, they accidentally came across a hero. Rena immediately realized that he had already accepted some important mission and decided that they would go with him. Filela, however, appealed to Rena to leave her not to leave her, even though she joined them only yesterday. The hero gladly accepted the proposal and suggested that together to return to his comrades. They reported it to the whole staff, and immediately everyone paid attention to them. People wondered who his companions were. David said these friends helped him very much. Some people recognized Phil, a famous musician who was a true heroine. It was hard to believe that she was now going with them. One of the men explained that her music is able to enhance everyone's strength and movements. Everyone was passionate about her performance, which had already been heard earlier. The music was truly charming. People thanked her from all over her. The hero felt pride in 100 heroes and advice for his students. However, some still hesitated whether they could accomplish this difficult and dangerous task. The task was not easy, and the characters seemed vulnerable, though they were strong. Then one of the acquaintances reassured, "They were led by the manager himself, so they will cope." David no longer explained. Everyone already understood his advice. He knew that it would be just a disrespect to doubt now. So he briefly ordered the equipment, and the team immediately took up the case. The hero noted that David is a really good leader, and he is respected by everyone around him. David smiled in response and added that he was still far from the skill of 100 heroes. Then he apologized for the behavior of his subordinates and asked not to pay attention to it. Soon everyone was aware that they were ready. David praised them for speed. Now it's time to go. Their team came to the farm, which was located on the edge of the city, and was under the hot sun. They were met by a man in simple farm clothing. He had already heard that they had taken up the case and sincerely thanked them for arriving so quickly. The hero realized that he was faced with a farm worker. His guess was confirmed. The man congratulated Izon, because the mayor warned that he should come. They were instructed to cope with angry animals. The boys lifted their eyes up to the top of the farm and saw 3 strange creatures directly on them. These were sheep with soft, shiny wool and large, sturdy horns. One of these creatures simply broke a wooden fence and ran out. Izon immediately recognized these metal sheep. He had already met them earlier. The farmer explained that when the sheep are excited, their wool and horns become strong, as if metal. This explains why the wooden fence has already fallen apart and the metal still stands. But he does not stand for a long time. Usually they behave calmly, but now something is stirring, and they cannot reassure them. The farmer pointed to the building, which was surrounded by the fence. It is there that you can leave the sheep until they calm down. But the hero had another idea. He suggested finding the cause of aggression and understanding it. The farmer agreed with this plan. David confidently decided that with their power they would be able to conquer these creatures. He asked how many metal sheep were. The mayor claims to be only 104. These are extremely important creatures to which all are very attached. We need to have time to save them until something is terrible. They agreed and promised that they would now be treated more gently. David suggested that Ion protest the force of influence, and he agreed. It was at this point that the flock approached them. After focusing, David applied the magic of conquest. The magical wave swept the field and the sheep stopped immediately in front of it. One of the men turned to Isona, noting that it was not enough, although she stopped them, but did not solve the problem. David nodded as a sign of consent. It does not decide everything, but at least all remain whole. He suggested returning the sheep over the fence. David addressed the audience and gave the task. Everyone should join a group of 3 people and catch 1 sheep from their row. Everyone started working at the same time. Izon thought that they should also join. Filela noted that this is their own business, so she is ready to do her best. Rina also did not want to disappoint the teacher, so she suggested to split. She will go with a branch, and the teacher will go differently. Izon nodded and agreed. Phil laughed and said Rini so that she would trust her as a senior student. She promised she would always support her. Rina thanked for faith and support. The hero made a choice and went to the right, and Filela asked the teacher to see from the side of how she would give herself advice. One of the metal sheep suddenly attacked Rina. She was well aware that it was impossible to kill now, because in this condition, hypnosis has almost no effect. But suddenly, she had an interesting thought in her head. At the last moment, Rina cleverly bounced sideways and quickly got her deck. The sheep ran past but suddenly stopped, and in a moment she fell to the ground. This Rina used a magic kick. The method was a little sharp, but he eventually, she said softly, fall asleep calmly. The Phil could not believe. She had no idea that Rina would handle her sword and put it in sleep. The girl pulled out the violin and prepared to demonstrate her skills. Now her turn has come. Rina was a little discorded. She apologized for her curiosity, but still did not stay and asked where the girl came from this violin. David could not hide his delight. The girls had already caught one of the sheep. He did not doubt that Mrs. Rin was capable of it, and she just smiled and thanked. She looked at David, and he only looked at the boys in response that he could not even handle even 1 sheep. 2 men tried to keep the sheep, but their words had no power. One of them pleaded with a friend not to give up and urged someone to come to the rescue. The sheep escaped, She needs to be caught until she finally escaped. David could not believe he saw. Even experienced fighters were difficult to cope with these creatures. It was evident that the boys were kept by force, but already tired. It all took a long time. David hoped that the magicians, fighters, and those who were accustomed to the clashes would be able to give advice somehow. Phil warmly smiled and suggested helping the magic of performing. Her music could strengthen their abilities. David thanked Mrs. Doolell if it was not difficult for her. Rena could not calm down in any way. She was very fond of finding out where Fila Pudila violin is. She thought maybe she hid in a special magic bag, but Fila only answered a mysterious smile. She said she would tell the secret then. Now the main thing is to complete the task. In order not to distract the magicians of the words, Phil decided to just play and immediately took up the case. As soon as she started, the music immediately spilled the field. Men who still kept the sheep kept freezing on the spot, as if forgetting about fatigue for a moment. No one understood where this amazing music came from, which fills the heart with warmth and seemed to embrace from the inside. But everyone noticed that the forces were returning again, and now everything should come out. The wife gained courage again, because one of the workers loudly urged everyone to give up and hold together. Sheep seems to have finally become calm. David expected this from a student who raised 100 heroes. He praised Phil. Her melody strengthened the mood of all around. Phil smiled happily and sincerely said that she likes when everyone was working with smiles on her face. Suddenly, there was a loud noise behind. The characters turned in surprise, trying to understand what happened. One of the huge metal sheep still has not stopped. She was rapidly rushing to the worker. Phil noticed that this animal is beyond the action of its reinforcement, so magic does not work. Rena hurried forward, but Fila restrained her, assuring that everything is fine and the situation under control. However, Rena never understands what was happening. The situation became dangerous, so Fila decided to change the approach. She confidently reached forward and caused starting magic. Her right hand flew toward the sheep immediately and stunned the animal. The sheep fell to the ground. Rena was surprised and could not understand what had happened to her hand. Meanwhile, Phil remembered. Of all who surrounded her, only the teacher knew who she really was. She was a machine. A creature who could disassemble and reinstall her body with magic. Rena was confused because she never met anything like this. She was told that this race was extremely rare. The origin of autotons remains a mystery. They look almost like ordinary people, but they can be found very rarely, and almost no one knows who they really are. Even in social science textbooks, which Rena took on the advice of the teacher, they were only briefly mentioned. It was surprised by David. Rena remembered that the teacher talked about different races, but was still surprised by how Fila was behaving. She not only acted with her, but also really understood everything. Phil became aware that she was pleased to receive praise. This again ignited the desire to do something in the ring. The girl also gave her left hand, decisively pulling her forward. Suddenly the boys saw the hand appeared and stopped the next sheep they tried to hold. They were already worried that the fence would not withstand the load. But unexpectedly, some strong hand grabbed a sheep by her head and put her on the ground. Fila said that she was able to run not only her hands, but also other parts of the body. The men froze with surprise. The girl with one hand stopped a stubborn sheep, with which they both could not cope. In addition, it was an automaton. Before them was a student of a hero, a real mentor for hundreds of people. Fila only waved her hand and said that their teacher is really incredible, and his strength is not at all related to the race. She just cast her gaze. On a wide field was the Ison, completely conquering the whole herd. His figure was really reminiscent of an experienced shepherd, which leads the sheep to order. David and the girls in amazement ran to the hero. He calmly explained that he had already collected the main part of the sheep. David wondered, how did he succeed? The sheep's wool became pure white, and the animals themselves were excited. The hero just smiled and said, "I just talked to them." David doubted that ordinary words would be able to reassure them, because everyone was too excited. Suddenly, the boys shouted. One of the rams escaped and ran directly to Izon, interrupting their conversation. David immediately recognized the main person in this person, the most powerful one he once met. He hastened to warn the hero, "We must run out of here." But the Ison just smiled and said, "I will cope." After that, he addressed David and asked, "Take others away, so that they do not interfere." The hoofed hoof quickly gained strength. The hero noticed the ram run straight to him, configured together. Izon realized that it was necessary to try to stop it. David stared in a way, not understanding why the Ison lowered his staff to the ground. The thought was in her head. What did he think? Izon got up and said, "First you need to slow it down, otherwise it may be dangerous." When the metal leader came closer, the hero threw his hands forward. He grabbed the ram for large horns and threw the animal through himself. Izon smiled, looked at him, and said, "Look at the clean sky," and gently put him on his back. Everyone around the silence. David and everyone else stood the amazed. The hero cleverly threw a metal ram, which was heavy as a whole ingredient of the ingred. It seems that the leader of the rams is all right. He just fell to the ground but did not get any damage. David assured that everything was fine with the ram. He just overturned, but did not hurt. Filela came to the stunned man and smiled, recognizing the branded reception of the teacher. David laughed. Only when he saw it with his own eyes, he realized how scary it was. Even experienced warriors could not repeat such movements. Filela explained that it was quite natural because the master himself taught them martial art. She was certain that Rina inherited many skills from him. Rina confessed that she wanted to find out even more. But now the master Izon showed her only the basics of self-defense. David laughed nervously because for him her blows did not seem like simple protection. He was fascinated by Izon, a true teacher of heroes. Meanwhile, the hero himself turned to all the animals and called for them to calm down. The beasts looked at him, because he had just won their leader. Izon smiled warmly and said, "Calm down. Listen to me and pause." Having said these words, the hero released the power of the magic of the words that swept the whole flock. The sheep suddenly stopped, as if they listened carefully and understood everything. Everyone who was watching was stunned. The Izon was able to immediately reassure such a large number of sheep. And they really became very quiet. David, amazed at what he saw, came closer and asked, "Mr. Izon, what did you just do?" The hero was surprised to himself, because he simply spoke, filling his words with magic. David decided it was only a joke. After all, he talked to the sheep for a long time, and usually magic words are used only for a short time. Long spells take more magical power and are harder to conquer them. It is necessary to carefully monitor the consumption of energy, even in simple words. For most magicians, it is best to use no more than 2 phrases at a time. Only a real prophet is able to speak a lot and remain calm and collected. The hero calmly said David that he had already collected all the sheep in the herd. David agreed and immediately went to look for corollars, for which the Izon thanked him with gratitude. At this time, the hero decided to find out in the sheep that exactly worried them. David was also looking forward to the answer, because he knew that Izon was able to communicate with magical creatures. Meanwhile, Aro with his team has already arrived in a large estate, which stood on the very edge of the shopping city. They all pretended to be ordinary loaders, although they were in fact disguised by the soldiers associated with the Zamora's service. Their task was simple, to quietly get into the house and find out what was happening there. If necessary, grasp the researcher, and if there is a threat, protect the root at any cost. The group came to the door and knocked, first 4 times, then 3 more times. It was a special signal mentioned by the previous merchant. Rasta with a smile wished the owner a good day. He politely explained that he works in a company that is engaged in wholesale products and brought them goods for delivery. The door opened a little, and because of them the strange scientists looked. Everything was just as they were described before. He said that he was not suspected, and asked if the owner of the estate was in front of him. The man nodded, acknowledging, but added that Aro was not the same who came last time. He wondered where the previous merchant disappeared. Rose said that the man fell ill and was unable to go to work, but he very much asked for delivery today. Aro also gave a letter of apology and confirmation if you want to check. The owner immediately grabbed the papers and ran his eyes on the lines. He immediately recognized the familiar handwriting and realized that the document was real. He acknowledged that they had not enough food. He then allowed him to enter, and he sincerely thanked him for it. Later, he ordered his people to bring supplies. The owner led everyone to the cluttered room, led to leave things here and move on. Roy felt anxious. According to the available information, the cargo was to be left in the hallway. However, they were led into a premises that were completely isolated. He raised his glasses and thought. All the windows he saw were clogged with boards. There is something wrong here. However, it is unclear whether you can trust this old one. One of the guys approached him. Rose said they had just got rid of outsiders. Seeing the right moment, Ross used his ability to choose a demon and began to carefully explore the room. It seemed that a secret door was hiding in the wall, and it was realized that to open them, it was necessary to fill them with magic. One of the men asked Mr. Rod a question whether the door could be opened. He added that in the case of something the city government answers. Then Ro decided he would open himself. It would be quite unfortunate if only a void was behind the door. He pressed against the wall and sent her magical power. The doors began to open quietly. The boys smiled, because it was the course that was waiting for Mr. He noted that it is not the first time faced with such mechanisms. But suddenly their faces changed instantly. From the door, they saw them. The boys were already pale because a spooky wave and a crack was heard from the room. Inside lay a human skeleton, and near the mutilated body of a metal sheep. A huge wolf sat near them and devoured the meat eagerly. With others, they guessed that they witnessed a terrible scene, which they should not see. The group froze at the entrance to the dark corridor, covered with horror. The saddle wolf sat right in front of them, devouring the dead sheep. Human bones and residues of bodies were visible in the corner. One of the guys warned that this magical creature could be dangerous. He suggested that the wolf turned into one after ate the sheep that was turned into metal. On the body of the animal, Ro paid attention to the broken collar on which the address was recorded. Another participant of the team drew attention to human bones in the left corner. The collar recognized immediately. It was his longtime familiar sheep from his own farm. A scientist with a lantern in his hands slowly came out of the dark corridor. His gaze was wild, and he became constantly muting something that there was too much food. Rasta realized that this room had aisles to others. They have already proven that here are illegally holding magical creatures. Now you need to find and catch the guilty. Roy decided to find out whether there were metal sheep and human bones in this place. He just pointed his finger, and the scientist decided that it was about food, so he assured that everything was fine. He was surprised to hear what he called the remains of food. The scientist grabbed his head because he remembered how hard it was to pull the sheep alone. At first he took care of them as it should, but later realized it is easier to bring people. Its main obstacle is the problems with thinking. The group looked at him as if he were crazy. The scientist leaned to his wolf, who was eating the remains of a sheep. A frantic fire appeared in his eyes, and he rolled. If there is no more food, a good girl will be left without mana. After that, he ordered the wolf to attack people. The beast was alert and looked closely at them. The scientist said, "It's time to eat. Food is already here." The old man exclaimed, "It's time to have fun!" And at that moment the wolf rushed on the roof. He threw a charming sheet and immediately turned on a protective shield. The sheet shone and instantly turned into a large wooden board that reflected the attack. He praised himself for always having a spare magical tools at hand and immediately ordered his people to take action. The boys got a weapon that was hidden among their things and tuned to the battle. While the wolf was calling on the shield with claws, two men decided to rush at him. The first was amazed. The wool of the beast was rigid, as if stones. The second, armed with a heavy hammer, shouted to others to retreat, and hit the wolf with all his strength. The blow came straight to the head of the wolf. He collapsed to the ground but remained alive, because it was evident that the creature was a solid magic. One guy noticed that the beast managed to scratch even a powerful magic shield. His power is really scared. But the researcher disappeared somewhere. Roy showed a dark corridor. He noticed how the scientist disappeared into the depths. It seems that this man realized that he would not be useful in battle, so he decided to find another way out of the situation. After passing the corridor, they finally stood in front of the big door. They were probably hidden by the same scientist. The boys stopped and asked how to proceed. After all, what happened can already be called a crime. Maybe it is better to return and tell everything to the authorities. This would really be more reliable, because no one knows how many wolves hide around. Rost agreed that it was a good idea if they could get out of here. The group, along with the merchant, approached the door through which they came earlier and tried to open them. But the doors were not subject to, they were closed with a magical seal. Rode quickly glanced the wall around. There were strong protective barriers around, which made it possible to destroy the room or influence it with magic. All outputs were firmly closed. There was only one way to find and catch the one who was guilty of all this. Meanwhile, the Zone, along with the satellites, worked on the farm outside the city. The owner was surprised, because he did not expect that they would cope so quickly. But this is exactly what he hoped from those who belong to the door to the magic of words. David assured that it is all thanks to Mr. Eisen and his companions, not himself. The farmer was amazed when he learned that the hero spoke to metal sheep. He had no idea that he understood the language of magical creatures. Earlier, the farmer heard only the passionate stories of Samur about Izon. The farmer wanted to learn more about David, but he was silent like Zamor. Then the farmer asked if the task was completed. In any case, he was ready to thank generously. David thanked for the award and asked to give it an ison. They went to the field where the hero continued to talk to the sheep. David called him, saying that he brought the workers. But something worried the hero, and David immediately understood. Izon approached the farmer and began to ask him different questions. The farmer was a little surprised at the attention, but he still listened carefully to the guy. Then Izon asked, "Tell me, you should have 100 metal sheep on the field, right?" The farmer confirmed, "Exactly 100 without any deviations. This is one of the main rules of management." Ison said that only about 80 gathered here. The farmer mentioned that 15 more remained in the other field, so there are not enough 5. David looked around. No one was visible. The hero noted that both Filela and Rena and the magicians of the words carefully examined the entire area. No traces were found. The fence remained intact. Sheep cannot jump so high. He carefully wondered if any of the servants could get rid of animals. The farmer immediately replied that it was not. He assured that his workers conscientiously care about all animals. Ison thought that the perpetrator should be someone else. After all, every sheep told him his story. They were stolen, taken away, and even eaten. David did not understand what the language was about and what he meant. The hero explained that if you carefully make all the words that the animals said, you can understand. The abduction happened from the inside. They were very sorry because it could destroy the good deed of those who fed them, but were still afraid. The farmer asked Ison whether sheep did not really want to cause evil to people. Izon answered in the affirmative. Moreover, sheep are even grateful to people. These words were deeply moved by the farmer. He smiled, sincerely rejoicing that there was a real connection between them and the animals. That is why he could not allow anyone to steal these things. It was important for him to know who did it. Izon said that the sheep saw a person who looked like a monster and from whom it was desired to kill. Because of this, they really wanted to escape as far as possible. On the side where the city was located, there was a strange noise. David thought that it may have been a magical creature, but the farmer has never heard something like this. Izon appealed to the sheep to endure a little more until they overcome the danger. The sheep agreed and assured that they would try to stay. In any case, David advised to focus on the search for a thief. Even one sheep is not easy. It takes at least 2. Perhaps animals noticed a special sign or sign? This is what I wanted to find out the Ison. He mentally asked them if someone noticed the moment of theft. One of the sheep replied that she saw it. A crazy man looked at them and said, "You were lucky to become a food for a creature that hunts for demons." He sincerely believed in his perfect technique and simply grabbed one of them. All around were surprised, but it was these words that sheep said. The hero only told what he heard from them. At first, David could not believe it. There is really a person in the city who under year is a monster of demon meat. Suddenly, a loud roar crawled. David immediately decided that it was an explosion. Izon quickly turned to noise, and it became clear that the sound came from the city. At the same time, the company with the merchant was in the estate of the scientist. One of the boys went to the door and warned that he would open them now. Ross warned him that he was careful. R.O. did not notice any magical traps, but suspected that ordinary could be well masked. He gently opened the door. The scientist appeared in front of them and said, "Don't be afraid, go inside." There was only a table in the small room. The scientist was inside the magical circle, which he painted with the pentagram. He guessed that the boys had already coped with the wolf. That beast was strong in battle, but too stupid to be a real threat, so it was easy to get rid of it. The scientist with cold confidence said that that ghostly wolf was made of mana. If necessary, it will easily create dozens of such, because he is not sorry to lose them. The old man did not really understand why R.O. and others came. He just didn't ask about it before. The merchant explained to his question that they gathered here to talk about research. If his actions are threatened by the city, they should stop it as the military who serve the mayor. Moreover, they themselves saw his crimes. The scientist guessed that all this was because he was feeding or growing a wolf. He thought that these guys only wanted to impose their senseless rules, hiding behind. However, he was not upset, because his case was already completed. He smiled and said that he had already finished growing. He didn't need anything more. Some of the team wanted to immediately rush and arrest him, but he raised his hand to stop him. His magical eye noticed something unusual in the wall behind the scientist. The old man, remaining within the magical circle, turned to the wall and offered to move in the direction. He destroyed the illusion that hid the passage. but said that he did not intend to flee. This is a senseless idea. Rasta raised his hand and stopped everyone. He whisperedly whispered, "Stand! Something is hiding behind this wall." In the dark corridor behind the scientist stands a giant wolf with 3 heads. Several men were surprised that they were a real monster before them. One of them said, "The black fog that surrounds it exactly appeared not just." He looked at a strange beast, not even who was or what the creature was. The scientist laughed and said, "That's why you don't understand anything. It's not just a wolf. He ate the flesh of the evil god and turned into Fenrir Abyss." Ross was angry. Such a creature can be a threat to the whole city. But the old man only sighed heavily and acknowledged that he had grown him. No one could understand what was happening. The scientist appealed to Fenrir, asking to become the only one with his extraordinary essence. A giant beast swallowed him in an instant. It looked as if he had condemned himself to death. But with the help of his magic eye realized, this is not the end. The scientist was not just a victim. He connected with Fenrir. Fenrir laughed and announced that the merger took place. Finally, the frantic was able to feel the body of the beast that absorbed the divine energy. All the boys froze with surprise. The voice of the scientist suddenly came from Fenrir. None of them could imagine as possible. Young warriors did not even imagine what a merger with a magical creature was. This technique was once used, but after the war with the evil god, it was considered lost forever. Fenrir showed his sharp teeth and said, "Watching you from a height is a real pleasure. You're all such naive. Once upon a time, the merger technique has long been forgotten, and it seemed impossible to restore it. Aro could not understand how it was able to apply it, but it was obvious that he actually moved his consciousness into the body of the beast." Fenrir laughed and said, "It's not just a unification is a new stage of evolution. To such fools like you still not understand that." The central head of the wolf lifted the muzzle to the light and said, "Now I finally understand my master. Everything that is happening is true." One of the boys looked at him with horror and asked, "Are you crazy?" Fenrir suggested that the guy probably did not hear his words. It seems that only he himself could hear the voice of his master. And for other people, the words of the monster remained incomprehensible. The monster decided to wipe the whole city from the face and get rid of humanity with it. In his head was constantly heard a harsh voice, "Kill, destroy." Fenrir applied his magic and called for the help of shadow wolves. A whole flock created from darkness suddenly emerged near him. He roared, "There are too many. We leave." Fenrir just laughed and said, "I will destroy you." Then he opened the mouth wide and released a fiery breath. Ra saw Fenrir concentrating a great deal of power around him, and immediately realized, if he attacks, it can lead to a catastrophe. Suddenly, the wolf released a rocky ball of pure mana. Meanwhile, 2 guys were standing at the estate, looking at surprise. Their friends have not appeared for a long time. One of them suggested to leave the guard behind and go inside, but as soon as they moved from the place, a strong explosion suddenly sounds around. From the explosion, the house immediately flew into the priests. People ran out of their homes because no one could understand what had happened. A crowd suddenly gathered near the estate. Men who stood outside could not believe what they saw. One of them said that there is no more point in making merchants. The moment of grasping for weapons. Rob, covered with ashes from fire, left the burning house. One of the guys ran to him and asked excitedly what happened there. A frightened merchant rushed to people with alarming news. A flock of magical wolves is approaching the city. He insisted that it was necessary to get a safe place urgently. But the audience looked at him in confusion, not understanding what happened. He raised his hands and called for people to flee. One of the men thanked him, saying that thanks to Ro, everyone remained alive. He was a little embarrassed but smiled, remembering how he managed to create a magical shield. The acute angle of the shield did not hold the blow, but beat it in the opposite direction. One of the warriors suggested that the battle leave the field, but did not firmly refuse. Roy reminded everyone that it was the breath of a real monster. It was without any effort through the magical protection of the walls. Here you need a real magical shield. Setting the glasses, he confidently said, "I will fight with you." The boys were still discussing their further steps, when suddenly a flock of wolves appeared on the horizon. The man in the dressing loudly shouted that the moment of use of heavy weapons from the cart. He immediately ordered everyone to break into couples. It was at this moment that Fenrir suddenly appeared from the smoke club. The giant beast clumsy on the roof of a burning estate and exploded with a loud laughter. The scientist is not accustomed to his new body. Some of it seemed to him alien, disobedient. However, this powerful body gave a sense of true grandeur, and he liked it. He promised to destroy everything around, especially a small city built by people. First of all, those who were most vulnerable to fear and panic were injured. Little wolves suddenly attacked the warriors. Their leader has commanded to stand the attack until he was approaching. The boys decided together that they would be able to overcome the enemy. However, Fenrir was not going to give up. He again applied his reception and caused shadow wolves. Rob and his friends were scared. Strange beasts suddenly began to appear in every lane of the city. Fenrir said with a smile, "I am able to call as much as I want. Show how long you last." Someone exclaimed, "Wolves are getting more." Rosta cheered the team. He said that there was still a chance to change everything. The boys responded to his words and again full of determination. The huge flock attacked them, and the battle became even fierce. However, with every minute they felt more and more. It seemed just an hour, although the forces were already exhausted. The army was far away, and no one knew when it was all over. Fenrir again rushed into the attack, this time releasing powerful thunderous breathing. Roy quickly lifted his shield to protect himself, but the blow turned out to be so powerful that it broke through the protection and struck everyone with lightning. The man standing next to RO hurried to him. Rosses corrected the glasses and said quietly, "It got a little..." But there was too much magic. He noticed that the mana began to shine again in Fenrir's mouth. The problem was that the merchant had only 2 spells. The situation became increasingly dangerous. He felt the forces left him and kneel. One of the warriors ran to him and urged not to give up with tears in his voice, because he was not a fighter. But he knew well, if he seems now, what will happen to him. In their eyes, someone tried to wipe the whole city from the face, take away their home and everything they lived. He looked at the man and confessed that he really likes this city. This means that she is ready to give everything and fight for him to the last. Fenrir felt that everything was well. He almost completely mastered his new body. So he ordered his flock to put an end to this game. He looked strictly at the shadow wolves. The time for decisive action has come. All together, without delay. The flock, having received reinforcements, rushed to people with new force, and Fenrir, meanwhile, jumped on the roof and stopped, looking carefully around. Ra lifted his head and noticed that the wolf learned conceived something interesting. He realized that the monster designed to simultaneously release a fiery breath from both of his heads, covering the whole city. The merchant threw 2 sheets with magical seals. They immediately flew in different directions. Fenrir smiled slyly and immediately released ice and thunderous breathing. His power was just incredible. He kept the shields, while Fenrir looked at him from above, saying, "You try in vain." Rost was almost celebrating the victory, thinking that the city was saved, but suddenly the body of the wounded wolf fell on him. He did not have time to prepare for the blow and fell to the ground. As soon as he tried to get up, as suddenly another opponent jumped on him. At that moment, the merchant realized that he was no longer protected by no force. But having clenched his teeth, he decided not to give up and prepared for battle. He clenched his fist and stated loudly that he would not seem and would fight until the end. Someone called his words a true revolution. It was at this point that Ainson appeared behind him and struck a wolf. He raised his head in surprise. He did not expect Aison to meet here. The whole team arrived with him. The girls were not late and came on time. Fenrir immediately noticed that reinforcement had come. Ains ran to RO, helped him to rise, and thanked his friend. Ains smiled, remembering that someone was pleased to save him first. He turned and saw David rush to them. David was sincerely glad that he had time to arrive in time, and Rost could not understand why they were here. David said that he only felt something unusual, immediately turned back. During the battle he heard the voice of Mr. Aison. Ains wondered if he would be able to tell what had happened. However, he was confused and did not know where to start his story. He decided to find out what was happening and found out. Here lived a scientist who explored the divine evil. It was he who grew a huge evil wolf, but then it turned out to be not enough. The wolf ate its creator and connected with him into a single monster. Ainson and David looked at. The offender was really very dangerous, and Fenrir wondered why he was so uncomfortable to look at Aison. When everything is clear and everyone knows their role, the hero told about the idea. They retreat with the warriors, and he will remain to meet Fenrir. Filela said she wanted to take it, and Renee agreed to help. Together they remained to cover the retreat of others. Aison agreed. How it end, peace or death, no one knows, but he was ready to fight for this city until the end. Rin came to the group and asked everyone to leave. They will further understand. The man was confused, because he was not going to leave the fight. At this point, Fenrir ordered his flock to attack, so as not to let the enemies escape. The girl gathered lightly in the battle, and the Phil, who stood nearby, asked Rin to take people to a safe place. She assured that she would cope with the wolves. Filela warned, if someone interferes with the master's plan, she is not going to tolerate. Rin could not understand how this violin could help in battle, especially when wolves were almost approached. But Filela just smiled. For her, the violin was not just a tool. She easily waved it, and one movement cut the wolf in half. Filela did not want to dirty this thing because she usually serves as a bow. However, now in her hands it was a rapier, which looked like a regular violin bow. She lifted the tool and ordered the orchestra to be in a magical order. The violin lit and began to change its appearance. It changed to a cannon that completely covered the arm of Phil. Rin was stunned. Right in the eyes of the girl created a weapon of nothing. Filela explained that everything is really simple. She is the automaton, and many different weapons are hidden in her body. As the wolves ran closer, Filela released a powerful flash of magical fire. In one movement, it destroyed several predators together. Rin was enthusiastically exclaimed that it was just incredible. Filela agreed, though she confessed, her ability does not like others, so she hides her under the guise of a tool. And what does Rin feel when he knows this secret? Filela looked carefully and asked seriously, is it scary? The girl lowered her eyes uncertainly, healing with the answer, and then she looked with sparks in her eyes. It was extremely exciting. Phil was stunned by such an answer because another student answered the same. She was very happy when the master praised her. It gave her confidence and inspiration to help others. Rin remembered how Sensei said that everything would certainly come true. Filela was happy that the teacher noticed her and gently stroked her head. His words may not have been the greatest, but they meant a lot for a girl, because it was because of them that she could protect the happy smiles of people. She raised her hand, making it clear, it's time to proceed. This gesture was a signal from the skills of her orchestra. The wolves conquered her team, and then she pressed on the trigger and fired. At that moment, Ains, along with three-headed Fenrir, looked down from the roof. The monster mocked him, fool. There was a voice in his head. Ainson is the one who once defeated their ruler and expelled the gods. Fenrir realized that he was faced with the prophet Ainson himself. The prophet assured that he had never seen them before. However, the monster felt fierce hatred of the master deep in the blood and body of the prophet, so it decided to swallow him. Fenrir attacked, releasing a powerful lightning stream from his mouth. Ains clenched his teeth because he could not allow this city to be destroyed again. He lifted his staff and ordered him to absorb all the blow. He then ordered the energy to be referred, as if a loud roar of the beast. The staff broke out with bright light, but Fenrir just smiled boldly. To the surprise of the monster, nothing broke. The staff absorbed the whole blow, and Ains did not even shake. Fenrir did not understand how the hero stood a similar test. Ainson explained that he has a special weapon, the best among all existing ones. He looked carefully at the glittering staff. He showed the true essence of everything around, and responded when the desire to protect the city. Fenrir did not consider it something special, so he immediately rushed to Aisen, releasing sharp claws. The blow turned out to be too slow. Ainson turned away. In the other hand, his sword was already shining. Fenrir shouted that all this was in vain. He has the power of the gods, and Ains is just worthless. Fenrir smiled and said, do not think that a regular sword was able to kill me. But the hero did not plan to cut him at all. During the war he encountered such creatures more than once, and fought until the last breath. Fenrir widely outlined his mouth and tried to attack, but Ains just disappeared in front of him, and the wolf remained struck and confused. No one even noticed how the hero suddenly emerged in front of all, and struck the attacking head just in the face. Fenrir's body suddenly flashed sparks, and one of his heads broke into the explosion. Ains looked strictly and calmly that it is better to remain silent if you have nothing to say. Fenrir exploded from anger. How did it happen that he lost his vigilance because of his ordinary man? He fell from the roof but quickly jumped and got to his feet. Ainson was really right. One head was not enough to destroy the nucleus. If it was a common Fenrir, he would have long been won. In the depth of the mouth, the monster flicked the dark sphere, its nucleus. Each head had the same, one for each. Ains boldly jumped in front of the monster. He understood well. While at least one of the nuclei remains, the monster's body is constantly recovering. Fenrir shot an icy breath, but the hero cleverly moved sideways. However, the wolf's second head immediately threw out the flame's tongue directly on him. The longer the battle lasted, the more the city declined. Ains realized that it was necessary to finish it as soon as possible. To beat two nuclei at once is the best solution. I finally decided to act that way. Ainson lifted his sword. directing him to the hellish Fenrir, and firmly said, "These are your last words, the beast." He ordered his body to become faster and stronger. He was preparing to gather all his power for a decisive blow. The fire broke out around the hero, and he rapidly rushed to Fenrir. In response, the beast attacked two heads at once, rushing to the enemy. 2 attacks were in vain. Both flames, and the icy breath flew past. Fenrir realized the blue flames scatter his strength. Einstein explained that these flames were real because it was created with mana and magic. It is not only intended for protection. He ordered the flame to break through his enemies. Einstein stepped forward, overcoming both the flames and the ice, gradually approaching the beast. His path was illuminated by a blue flame, which scattered all the obstacles. He used the technique of Justice of the Ardor. In his left hand he kept staff, and in the right, a sword. A direct blow, and Fenrir's body fell to the ground. At the same moment, all the wolves suddenly disappeared from the city. People could not restrain their delight. Einstein stood at the smoldering remains of the monster. Rue said loudly that it was an incredible force. David could not believe his eyes. The hero was not just strong, but had a completely different, incredible level. Despite his quiet and calm look, he was always attentive to everything around. Everyone instantly realized they are faced with the prophet himself, the legendary mentor of 100 heroes. After our victory, deputy mayor, soldiers, and firefighters arrived in place. The observation tower noticed the battle. Woods could not believe his eyes. Someone already overcome the mighty hellish Fenrir? After all the explanations, the boys received their award and sincere recognition. Woods thanked the hero for saving the city. On the same day, an official award ceremony took place at which Ains and his team received honored honors. In the evening, to celebrate the victory and the end of the mission, a solemn feast was arranged in Katahdam. Ainson said he had received information about the search in the researcher's house, and that was where he made his conclusions. Almost all documents were burned, only 5 metal collars were found. So the story of Metal Sheep ended, and everyone plunged into the celebration. After that, the heroes began to help restore the city. Days at the shopping center passed quickly and unnoticed. The mayor had to return to the city on the eve of training. At a moment, someone knocked on the door and Eisen went to open. The messenger apologized to the master and reported that the mayor had changed his schedule. Ainson noticed that their return is postponed. One of the envoys of the leaders told him that the conference was moved to a neighboring magic city. The mayor will stay here for a few more days. Woods apologized for it, but Ains just smiled. He didn't think there was something to apologize for. But the hero already felt changes in the schedule can lead to new difficulties. If outsiders learned about the appearance of a magical beast until the mayor was in the city, it could have caused panic among people. Einson said he would go to the magical city and convey the important news. Woods was very surprised because he did not expect such an act. Ains confessed that he was still going to go there. If not met now, then it can be too late. Woods shook his hand and handed him a responsible assignment. After that, Ains decided to go on a journey. The next morning, Ainson, Filela, and Rena were already waiting at the southern gates. Filela was looking forward to when she went on a trip with the master, and Rena was genuinely rejoiced in her. Ainson also enjoyed such journeys in a large company. Mr. Woods handed him a letter with everything you need to travel. Suddenly, a famous carriage pulled up. He greeted and remembered that they had not seen themselves for a long time from that holiday. He explained that he received from Woods the task of accompanying Aisen to a neighboring city. Heroes himself, and did not know. It was a volunteer who understood the situation and agreed to go with them. The RO trader suggested his assistance on his own. He confessed that he did not want to be those who avoid taxes. He also mentioned how Ainson repeatedly rescued him. As a participant in Guild by Cadides, he sought to benefit others. The hero noticed that the words were sincere, and thanked sincerely. In response, RO said that Ainson is the most caring person he has ever met. With his hand, he invited everyone to sit in a carriage. This time, she was extremely comfortable. Inside the atmosphere of comfort and luxury, Phil smiled happily. She had not been traveling in a good company where conversations and laughter prevailed. Ains was also looking forward to this adventure. Rena has a little shyly admitted that it was the first joint journey for her. When everyone is comfortable, the carriage began to move forward. He solemnly reported that their journey had begun. A few days have passed. Filela looked out the window, and when she saw something exciting, she showed her hand there. "We happened to us." It stood as a sign, a landmark in this place. From its high walls, a wide plain that stretched to the horizon was clearly visible. Ainson did not know about this building before, but thought that she once served during the war. Rost agreed, noting that the buildings of those times were really very strong. Just when the hero passed by, he constantly noticed something new for himself. It was much more interesting than going to the city normally. Rina agreed with that, and Filela also added that any trip with the master brings real pleasure. Ainson thanked the fact that he was driving so carefully. In response, he just said that this is his duty. In addition, a smooth ride is just one of the many advantages of such a journey. One of the 100 heroes gave some right tips, making the roads much better, and cities were connected peacefully and conveniently. However, Aro himself did not consider it a sufficient basis for pride. Ainson had his opinion. If you can use something, we should be grateful. Ra laughed, because it seems that our hero loves when he is complimented, and it pleases him. Filela has already noticed that Mr. Ainson always praises even for the slightest success. This makes more inspiration to work more hard. Rina agreed because in her world, the master praised simply for answering the letters. The merchant smiled warmly and thanked her for it. Ainson could not understand why everyone was so surprised. Because when a person copes with his work, he deserves praise. It is quite logical and correct. After a small pause, they spoke again. Traveling in Aro carriage, they were fortunate enough to see many beautiful places. The merchant rejoiced that everyone appealed to everyone. There have been many steamers over the last 10 years, and some of them are reminiscent of real cities. One of Aison's students even dreamed of creating a similar giant ship. Filela happily exclaimed that with her master at least to the edge of the world. She felt such an influx of inspiration that she even wanted to make a song. Soon the picturesque lake, which flickered in the sun with its transparent waters, spread. Ains with delight said the mountains were incredibly good. Roy confirmed that these were really known maiden mountains. In these parts, unusual plants grew, and rare animals lived here. The trails were well guarded, so this place was a real find for climbers. Thanks to the ITE heroes, all the paths quickly opened. Phil already knew about this good work. One of the heroes passed through the mountains and created a trail there so people can cross them safely. There was a path built by Iseon's students. They created convenient devices that helped travelers on the road. The master was very pleased that the results of students became a common part of their lives. Suddenly, Ains noticed the demons ahead and warned the Rao. There were at least 4, and they all had the appearance of lizards. Ro did not notice them and asked where to look. Filela showed which direction, and then he lifted binoculars. Ainson was not mistaken. Even from afar it is clear that there were actually 4, at least as if they were trying to hide. Although they were already used to local conditions, finding them was still quite simple. Ainson wondered if these creatures were a threat. Ra explained that although attacks occur infrequently, there were already reports of attacks on traders. Therefore, you should not count on friendly relationships. Rina drew attention to something unusual. It seemed to her that there were some thick mucus on the paws of the lizard. Ra again lifted binoculars and looked closely. It was really soft. Ainson expressed the guess that they could taste the demon flesh, and it was because of this that they became so fiercely aggressive. The hero smiled to the Ro and said that the moment came to resolve this issue. The merchant asked if Ainson was really sure of his decision. He replied that leaving them just on the side of the road is dangerous. Therefore, he ordered to stop the carriage. The carriage stopped. Ainson immediately jumped out and headed to the lizards. The girls also left the carriage quickly because they wanted to go with him. The master agreed. They will go together, all 3. When the hero came closer, he was surprised. The lizards did not even respond to their appearance, and did not rush into the attack. All the views were turned on a small chanterelle that raged in a flame. Rina immediately recognized. Before them was a real fiery fox. Although this creature was a demon, in fact it remained a young child. One of the lizards hit her paw, and the fox flew far away. Although she bled, she was still able to stay on her paws. Meanwhile, the lizards, eagerly shining their eyes, were almost buried by the desire for prey. Rina has sadly suggested that demons were almost always fighting with each other. Ainson agreed, but added that such enmity was not normal for them. The fact is that hunting is not part of the process of growing up the demon. In this situation, there was something strange. The lizards were frankly mocked in Fox. Such cruelty could only cause the presence of a demon. Ains immediately realized, something is wrong here. He turned to the creatures, urging them to stop, and they immediately looked at the sound of his voice. Ainson tried to explain that after they ate the flesh of the demon, they were influenced by softness. The reason may have been completely different, But the hero was aware that he would never be able to talk to them again. The lizards didn't even think of listening to Ison. They just rushed at him, not mentioning a word. With a cold look, he warns, "I will destroy you." The students quickly deal with 2 lizards. They immediately announce this teacher, and the master understood everything without words. He made a powerful attempt and cut into both one blow. After that, he calmly said that everything was over. However, they remained careful. Rena was alert, and Filela was watching the surrounding area to prevent softness. They came to them, and the merchant thanked the heroes for their help. Ra noticed that Ison was beating his sword skillfully, but Ainson only shrugged and said that the opponent's actions were easy to predict. However, above all, he was worried about the wounded baldness. The little beast was barely on his feet. His wound was very difficult. Ainson decided to help immediately, but as soon as he came closer, the beast immediately alerted. His body swept the flame again. He was alert to protection. Rost advised not to touch the fox. Ains added that these creatures can go fire through strong emotions. Adult creatures are able to burn the whole house, which is still very small. But even it will not be close to it. If he does not help, it will die. The hero asked Ro whether he had medicinal potions. He replied that he had such, but they are only suitable for people and unicorns. They do not work on demons. The ingredients of these agents may be ineffective or even harmful. But Ains was well aware of what potions were needed, so he confidently asked to bring them to him. Rob took 2 bottles from the box and stretched them out. He prepared these potions specifically for a future trip. Ains immediately noticed that this thing is very high quality. Roy explained that he had purchased it in a proven place and wondered what she would need. Rost was just astonished. He could not even imagine that the protagonist would start talking to the medicine. Ainson took a bottle and asked them for help for baldness. Suddenly they shone with bright light. Ro watched with curiosity how Ainson stretched him a bottle, saying that it was intended for humans. The second drink left with him. He had blue belladonna and mountain onions. He asked him to go out, and the potion suddenly boiled, and the cork jumped out of the bottle as if from a bottle of champagne. Rasta was passionate about how the potion gradually changes its color and magical composition. Ains nodded, confirming that the liquid has now become soft and light. It was a real healing potion created with good intentions. The hero thanked him and realized that the moment had come to save the baldness. Roy noticed that Lysena was still looking at Ison with distrust, and his bleeding became increasingly stronger. The hero quickly picked him up. He shouted frightenedly, but Ison was gently assured that everything is under control. Although the little fox was blazing, he was not going to stop. Ainson quietly assured that everything was well with him, and the little animal calmed down a little, staring at him. The young man in the burnt clothes gently stroked the confused baldness and told him that it was a real fellow. Meanwhile, Rode shouted at the fire. Ainson assured that the danger was not terrible because the magic protects him. He asked instead to give the potion and help cure the fox. He stretched the bottle, and Ainson leisurely and carefully poured the medicine on the wound. Just in the eyes of all, the wound began to shake quickly. It happened instantly. He was surprised how much human potion was. He asked Ison how he did it. Ainson replied that it turned out by itself. By accident. He just collected the ingredients that are suitable for firefoxes, and the potion seemed to understand what to do. Ra agreed, but noted that without understanding demons, it is impossible to create this. Ainson shared in response that he once studied with those who were students of the Beast Goal. He was surprised to see, but Ains was only modestly asked not to make a master. Then he suggested checking the skin of the fox. It was quite intact. Lysena considered herself as if not recognizing her own body. The hero noticed an unusual drawing on his back, so just in case he carefully interrupted the fox. When Ains finished, he carefully released the baldness. It immediately jumped and cheerfully circled in a circle. The girls smiled, and they exhaled with relief. The hero looked at himself. His clothes were burned a little, but thanks to magic, his body remained intact. Rue proposed to dress, but Ainson assured that his clothes would gradually recover. Roa suggested that magic works when you get injured. It struck Ison. He did not expect him to guess. Ainson said that these clothes made friends of one of his students. The student noted that the master was not too worried about his outfit, so he decided to give him this magic clothes. Such magic was very difficult and valuable, the true power of the prophet. Ainson was surprised to say how the baldness settled on his shoulder. The baby touches the burned glove with the tongue. Ison thanked him and assured him that he would repair everything, so you should not worry. Phil and Rena with joyful faces ran to the teacher. Rena said that there is no danger around all around. The hero sincerely thanked the girls for his support and asked them to return to the carriage. He also thanked the foxes and offered him to go home, but the fox ran and grabbed his leg. Ains stopped, smiled, and asked what happened. Rina looked at him, and Filela reported that Lys was already near them. Apparently, he remembered their smell. The baby jumped and landed Ison on his chest. It was a clear sign. He also wanted to go with them on the road. Phil remembered that she was once invited with her. The hero informed the bald that their path is lying in a big city. The fox was angry, and Rina seemed to be trying to convey to her some opinion. His house may have been there somewhere, but he was afraid and did not want to go alone, so he decided to stay with them. Ainson asked Ro whether it was allowed to bring the fox with him to a magical city. Rost did not deny. The fox was not aggressive, so there would be no problem with him. Ro also noted that the unicorn is also considered a demonic creature. So, everything was decided. The hero smiled sincerely and invited a new friend to join them. Some time has passed, and travelers finally reached the magical city of Stratus. When they came up, I was informed that was already on the spot and asked where the fox went. He hid under the hero's clothes. Rina noticed that this fox likes to sit next to her heart. Rost pointed to the building standing at the end of the street and suggested going to the town hall. Ainson noted that all the formalities need to be settled first. He agreed with this, because in order to keep the demonic beast, you must first obtain the appropriate permission. In addition, they have a chance to learn more about the mayor of this commercial city. Ainson hurried to have time to pass an important letter from the deputy mayor. Their carriage moved the main street, and many carts and people gathered in front. Ainson noted that the city is boiling with life and resembles a real shopping center filled with bright colors. As the name indicated, in this place magic helped even in the smallest things. Even in the kitchen, they were cooked over an open fire, and frozen treats were particularly popular among desserts. Ross promised to show everything with his own eyes. Ains was barely noticeable. It was really very beautiful. Rina did not hide her delight. Looking at everything around, she baked her lip. So much she wanted to taste local dishes. Finally, they came to the city hall building in a magical city. The worker ran out of the building, apologized for the delay, and quickly took care of our carriage and luggage. Einstein noted that everyone was rushing around. Even Phil surprised it. Rost recalled that he had always been quiet here before, so he decided to fill in the application for registration of the beast. The application for 2 demons was accepted without unnecessary delay. Meanwhile, while Roy was talking to Asen, they were seen by the girl. She recognized the way and immediately approached him to say hello. It was Melissa, the secretary of the mayor of the trading city. Melissa also mentioned Phil, recognizing her. However, she noticed that something had changed around that girl. Filela had fun with her hand. Rue mentioned that Filela was more restrained and removed. Melissa noticed it and intriguedly asked what changed. Roy introduced Melissa with his comrades, Rin and Inson, who smiled together in response. Melissa said that you could turn to her just a secretary, and wondered why they needed a mayor. Ains stretched her letter. Seeing her magic mark on the envelope, Melissa immediately recognized him. She politely asked for permission to review the contents, and the hero agreed. After that, she invited everyone to sit at a table for tea. When Melissa read the letter, she was surprised in the same way as R.O. Ainson mentioned that he was called a prophet in this message. Melissa decided to make sure that the truth was told in the letter. He confirmed everything and asked no one to tell anyone. At that time, Melissa finally realized why Phil began to behave differently. At this time, Phil demonstrated Rin as flowers blossomed in the brew. Rin was delighted to watch the play of light and how the petals were slowly opened. Melissa read the letter, hid it back, and promised to pass the mayor. Ainson asked if everything was fine. I want to make sure that there were no problems. Melissa confidently said that everything is under control and she was ready to become a mediator. But unexpectedly behind her was a voice. It is not necessary. Everyone turned their heads sharply and noticed a girl with disheveled hair. The luminaire girl with fluffy ears and tail called the mayor of the shopping city Lynette Strick. She explained that she came to meet her mentor. Ains with a smile asked how she was doing. Lynette said she was fine, even better than before. She noted that they had not seen themselves for a long time. She tried to look serious, but her tale was still fun from side to side. Melissa barely kept not to laugh. The hero also smiled, because this behavior was familiar to her race. Filela came closer, and Lynette immediately recognized her and made a smile that she was always frank with the teacher, and never shy. Filela laughed and said that everything became different when she left the theater. She added that if it were not Ainson, she could have been different. Lynette wondered why they came to the city all together and confessed that she would even envy them a little. Filela explained that it was so easy and introduced Lynette to Rin. Lynette immediately recognized the girl. She has repeatedly written in response to the teacher's letters. Rin nodded and named her full name. Phil remembered the day they first saw in a lively trading city. Then Rin immediately showed herself as a good man and became a true sister for Phil. Lynette smiled and said that if they were her teacher's friends, then they became her friends automatically. She suggested that you turn to her by name or just call her sister. Rin with pleasure agreed. Ains mentally noted that Filela and Lynette are very similar in character, so it is not surprising that they immediately got rid of the Rhine. He passed the letter to his student. Lynette came up quickly, thanked him, but seemed colder than usual. When she read the letter, she thanked the teacher sincerely for bringing her a report on its own. Ains was just indifferent to his shoulders. He traveled the world and just decided to visit the road. Lynette sincerely admitted that the girls he met is a real gift of fate. She wondered in Melissa when her mayor expires. Melissa only smiled and replied that there were several years left in office, so it is too early to worry. Lynette said with a smile she would check each gap. Ainson wondered how she learned about their appearance earlier than Melissa. She raised her hand and pointed up. Her meeting had to happen on the roof. She noticed the teacher even when they were just entering the city. To stay calm, she controlled her breath and walked silently, overcoming a considerable way. Ains just smiled because it was the reaction that he hoped from a sniper with a sharp vision. Lynette clenched his fist, trying not to show emotions, because she has not heard such words for a long time. She said she was not yet equal to her teacher, so she intends to train even more persistently. It was evident that she was very happy. Her tail was vigorously moving from side to side. Melissa thought that Mirka left a meeting through Ison. He already wanted to apologize, but Lynette smiled and said that it was time to break. A short vacation gave her strength, so the meeting promised to be even more productive. Lynette was genuinely happy, seeing the characters in her. Ison seemed strange that the meeting was appointed on the roof. This may be such a special magical habit, but everything turned out to be more difficult than they thought. They needed to watch the whole city and its surrounding area. Ains immediately realized that this is a very serious matter. Lynette confessed that the life of this city is now threatened. She started talking about how to survive. Ainson wondered if she had the right, like Mirka, to tell this. Lynette only nodded, not wanting to bother the teacher, but thought that they would really be very grateful for any support. Ainson asked the opinion of his students, and Rin, along with the branch, immediately agreed to help. Rost also offered his help because he had many acquaintances who were ready to support. When everything became clear, Ainson asked to tell about it in more detail. Lynette suggested climbing the roof, because it is convenient to communicate with other city leaders. She looked at Melissa, who was silent, and listened carefully to every word. Melissa immediately realized everything, gathered with thoughts, and passed everything in television. They were allowed to join the meeting. Ainson was surprised, because even working as a secretary, Melissa was skillfully coping with negotiations due to her telepathic abilities. She drew them with her hand and led them up, straight on the roof. Delegates from other cities were already expected on the roof. They immediately recognized the great hero of Ison and felt pride from his arrival. The young man called himself a Chard who is the head of the magical city. He sincerely thanked for his desire to cooperate and said he had already received everything he needed. Ains smiled in response and said that he was also glad to get acquainted. However, he confessed that he still did not understand what was happening here and asked him to explain the situation. Chard, with a warm smile, called everyone to the table because he intended to tell a long and interesting story. As soon as everyone settled, Chard began the story. He said it all began recently, when a huge pillar of flames appeared above the east, above the Maddox volcano. He showed his hand to the mountains that were visible in the distance. Filela thought there was a well-known tourist trail, but Chard noted that it was actually an active volcano. The ashes were not visible, and many thought it was somehow related to the empress, a mysterious mistress of these mountains. Rin was amazed because she did not even know that the mistress of the mountains was real. The Demosa lived here for many years and had a special fate. Rost agreed with the Chard. It was thanks to her in the mountains no more demons. The empress was distinguished by his mind and realized well what people were saying. The residents of the city have long maintained a friendly relationship with her, which lasted more than one generation. But lately, everything has become different. Chard thought that fire pillar was her magic, which is very reminiscent of Kitsuneb. When the researchers climbed high into the mountains, suddenly a formidable voice came from the darkness, which strictly warned them not to approach closer. It felt a real rage. Feeling the heat and threat, they did not dare to go. Ains wondered what happened then. It was banned to climb the mountain, and it was the right decision. The fire was becoming stronger, and even in the city it was already felt by its heat. The mountain was in serious danger. There was no chance to get to the palace of the empress, and everything became more threatening. Chard was very worried because the bench could get the city soon. His magic weakened, and with every minute it became more difficult to hold her on. Lynette took the bow and explained, "That's why they turned to the heroes. Soon it will become very dangerous in the city." Ainson quickly realized, again standing an experienced sniper again. He smiled because he knew, with such an arrow, she would be able to reach even the volcano. Chard agreed. In her arrows there was really strong icy magic. If the bench begins to flow, these arrows will be stopped immediately by turning it into ice. She could also knock the hot debris. Aeson struck it, though he had no doubt about Lynette's skill. If the empress was angry, they intended to use arrows with sleeping pills, and if it is very bad, even deadly. That is why they gathered all together. Ainson realized that all possible options were being considered here, but residents of the city do not want to be those who will attack the first. The hero thought that the empress was angry, but decided to talk to her. Lynette launched arrows with sheets, but she never waited. Ainson asked if she really was able to read. Although everyone was silent, officials tried to quench her anger. The locals respected the empress and did not want to lose it. The mayor assured that to kill the empress is a very extreme step for them. Ainson, meanwhile, praised Lynette for protecting the city with dignity. Hearing the good words, the girl was a little embarrassed, and timidly asked if someone could stroke her on her head. She barely resisted not to give her feelings, and when she came to the teacher, she confessed, "It would become a great motivation for me." Ainson noticed in her features that resembled a fella. Although it has not yet been resolved to the end, he decided to give consent. He got up and gently ran a hand on her head. Melissa gave him a smile, and the tale of Lynette had fun in different directions. People standing on the roof have never seen the mayor in that condition. Phil whispered quietly. All this happens directly in the eyes of the secretary. Rin was amazed at how frankly Lynette shows his feelings. Recently reading her letters, it was difficult to understand true emotions. And now everything has become obvious. Her letters always looked neat, but they did not feel real feelings at all. Lynette confessed to Rin that only near her can show her true emotions. Lynette was full of inspiration. She apologized for asking her to stroke, and then asked what kind of decision the teacher would make. Ains, with a smile, answered her question. The hero decided that first of all it was necessary to talk to the empress. If lucky, he will be able to know the truth directly from her. Everyone was looking at Aeson. How can he get closer to this dangerous mountain? However, Ains promised to be very careful. At first he suggested a little stroll and see the neighborhood, and then go back. Chard noticed that a little fox was looking out from Aeson's clothes, and asked who it was. The hero explained that he was rescued from the demons on the road. Because of this, the boy was constantly hiding because he still didn't feel safe. The baldness was staring at the distant mountains. Maybe there was his home somewhere. Ainson thought that the baby had noticed something. The baby sighed fatigue. The hero warned him of the danger, but was still ready to take the risk to find the truth. Ainson told Chard that he was going to go to the mountains to find out how the empress feels, and find where the little baldness lives. Chard decided to check what the hero actually wanted, so he joined him. So they formed a new team for research. Ainson did not deny, because Chard's support could come in handy. Chard was sincerely happy, and promised to make every effort. Chard thanked the hero for his courage. In order not to quarrel with the empress, he suggested joining forces. Aeson agreed, and the whole group went on a trip.